Hello and welcome, everyone. Glad you could be here. I'm Jess Berg, and I'm the current chair of the Pacific Northwest AES section. This is our third official meeting of the year, and we are so glad you're here. We had an online meeting in October featuring a life-changing and ear-saving in-ear monitor and hearing device called Adele by Stephen Ambrose. He's the inventor of in-ear monitors. It was very powerful, and thanks again to Dan for producing that one. It was well attended. A reminder that our sections meetings are typically September through June and will either be hybrid or fully online so people can join and participate with us from around the world. Our next meeting is being planned for the evening of December 9th and will be online, so save the date. It's going to be called A Conversation with Friends, 50 plus years of pro audio in the Pacific Northwest. Matthew Sutton is producing and can share a bit more. Matthew, do you mind taking the mic?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, no, I was actually inspired by an AES meeting that was held 40 some odd years ago when the people who ran the AES at the time looked at Rick Chinn and said, "Why don't you do a meeting about PA systems?" And so Rick cleverly said, "Well, I'll do that," and he got together a panel, and we had a delightful time. And so I figured I'd return the favor and invite him onto the panel too. Rick Chinn, Charlie Morgan, and Mac Perkins, who are old friends of each other for many years and old friends of mine as well, have agreed to just have a chat about what they've done over the last 50 some odd years in Seattle. Charlie Morgan, of course, owning Morgan Sound, Rick working in almost every pro audio company that was built in Seattle, as well as doing a few other things. And then Matt Perkins with PNTA, Pacific Studios, and being heavily involved in theater sound as well. It's not quite as high profile a set of guests as we're having tonight, but I think it'll be real interesting. And I'm imagining a few stories might be told.
Definitely. Thank you, Matthew. We'll have that up on our website here soon.
Tomorrow.
Oh, yay.
But I
Excellent.
need a Zephy link.
Amazing. Thank you. So yeah, you can stay tuned to the latest on our webpage, where you can also learn about becoming an AES member. There's a blue button at the bottom of the page that says joining info. You'll need 3 references, and we are happy to be your references. Just ask. Also, one of our section members has an incredible job opening to share as well. I'm going to turn it over now to Matt Stearns to share briefly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Stearns. I did concert audio and live performance sound for a long time, but about 8 years ago, I transitioned to working for a medical company. So Stryker is this huge multinational medical device and medical equipment company, and I do sound for them now. Much thanks to Bob Smith, who's also on the committee and part of the AES chapter here. I took over for him as he retired, if you will. But there are not many openings in Stryker for audio engineers, but there is one right now. It's not yet public, but it's going to be posted publicly very soon. And just to give a quick overview of it, there is a company in San Jose, kind of Silicon Valley area. It's called Vocera, and they make smart badges for hospital workers and other healthcare settings. And it's like a voice over IP communication device. Think of Star Trek communicator badges for hospital workers. They can talk to each other, they can make notes, they can do speech to text notes into patient charts, that kind of functionality for healthcare. And they need audio engineers to do quality assurance testing and to develop testing for the product. So it's a lot of software and speech recognition and test development. You need strong electrical engineering background, test development background, that sort of thing. And what I'm going to do is just drop this Word document into the chat. I hope this works. And if you're interested, please just check out the Word document. Most of what the job is about is kind of spelled out in there, and my contact info is in there. Again, the job is not yet publicly posted, but it's going to be posted next week. And if you're interested, please just get in contact with me and I can refer you to the person in San Jose who is looking for the right candidate. It pays, I think, quite well. So good job, good pay, good benefits. We get bonuses on a real regular basis, and yeah, real good job stability too. They don't get rid of people. So if it's something that interests you, check it out. Thank you.
Excellent. That is an incredible opportunity. Thank you, Matt, for sharing.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is San Jose based, so I didn't know if this audience would be the right audience. But again, I've been tasked with trying to find good talent for it, so might be worth moving to San Jose. I don't know.
West Coast, best coast. Great. And it looks like, yes, I can see that doc in the chat too. So you're good there. Okay. Awesome. I really also wanted to note, it is very important to our section that our meetings remain free and open to all. We use Zephy instead of Eventbrite because they don't take any fees. And thank you to everyone who did donate tonight. That is very generous. This covers our committee business needs, and we kindly thank you. Tonight, a friendly housekeeping reminder that we appreciate everyone using your real name, first and last. Please reach out if you can't find where to do this. And also, our section likes to do introductions for everyone who attends our meetings. And tonight we will do introductions at the end. So after the main presentation, we'll go through, everyone has a chance to introduce themselves, and we'll open it up to open chat and discussion if you want to hang out. Also, please be mindful of muting your microphone when not speaking. Please keep your microphone muted and your camera off during the presentation. However, please feel free to utilize the chat feature if you want to ask any questions. And between Dan and Gary and I and Jim, perhaps we'll find the right time to pop in and make sure that all questions do get asked. So if you need help finding the chat feature as well, please just flag one of us, we'll help you out. So yeah, I think that covers the business portion. Let's get to the fun stuff. We are very excited for tonight's presentation produced by our Jim Rondinelli. I'll let him introduce the evening. Jim?
Hi, thanks for the intro, Jess. And just one more thing. Thanks again, Matt, for helping us deliver value with the AES membership. Remember, you heard about the job posting here first. Look, I'm really excited to be here tonight. Seattle has been such an important music city, but perhaps the most commercially successful time in Seattle music in recent memory was the period that was anchored by the work of the three hosts, the three guests that we have today, Steve Fisk, Jack Endino, and John Goodmanson, the troika of power in the Seattle rock scene. It would be hard to imagine what this scene would be like, or three artists who have had more influence on the scenes in the brightest times for the Seattle music business than these three. You're talking about quintessential records from Sub Pop and labels like K, bands like Soundgarden, Nirvana, Sleater Kinney. They all come back to these guys, Mudhoney, et cetera, et cetera. So without further ado, and to get to the really fun stuff, allow me to introduce Steve Fisk, Jack Endino, and John Goodmanson, or Team EF and G, as they may be known from here on out tonight. Welcome, and I guess I'm going to start with you, Jack, going in alphabetical order. Jack, could you just tell us a little bit about your work and how you got into this, and just name drop a couple of the artists that of the records that you've worked on so many great records, but what are the ones that you see either as your calling card or you just want people to know more about?
The problem is I haven't updated my discography since 2022, and I've completely lost track. It's probably somewhere closing in on 1,000 records, either mixed or recorded or produced or some combination thereof. And now that I'm doing mostly mastering, I've completely lost track of it because I need a different discography for that. But I started out in the 80s with a home 4-track setup, a TAC 3340S, which still works, by the way. I got a new pinch roller from Athan Corporation a few years ago, and it's still working fine. So I learned how to record in my basement. I had a Tapco 6-channel mixer, which I also still have. It's due for a recapping. And half a dozen mics and a drum set and a Fender Twin and a little bass rig, and I sort of taught myself how to record myself, and then started doing my friends' bands, and then got a message from somebody I know who said, "Hey, that studio down the street from where you live," I lived in Ballard, "that Studio Triangle, it's going out of business." And I'd been talking with Chris Hanzik, who had done the Deep Six record, and my band Skinyard was on that compilation record. And I knew he was looking for a building, and I was looking to start working in a real studio and get out of the basement. And I'm kind of blanking on who it was that gave me the keys so we could go look at it. But long story short, Chris and I moved into the Triangle space in 1986, July, and reopened it as Reciprocal Recording. Most of the equipment was Chris's. But I just started working on his 8-track machine, and stuff started happening. And here we are. So that's the hard background there. I started working, I think the very first clients we had in the studio were Green River and Soundgarden. And Chris Hanzik had already worked with both of those. I was sharing the stage with them with my band Skinyard. And we were recording those bands. And after about a year, these two guys, John and Bruce, decided to start a record label. They said, somebody needs to release this stuff. And that was Sub Pop. And I just kept doing what I do. Chris Hanzik kept doing what he does. Like me, he's mostly doing mastering now. And I just started recording bands. And so when you see my name and people parenthetically say Jack Endino, parentheses, Soundgarden, Mudhoney, Nirvana, they're basically talking about my career before 1988. But whatever, I'll take it. So
yeah, fortunate brands to have on your side, right?
Could be worse, I get a little mileage out of it, but I just kept working, for the next, until now. And I could list other bands.
I'd like to interrupt and point out that those brands continue to increase in value as time progresses. So all of you out there choosing a brand, make sure it's one that's going to grow. Okay? That's all.
Thank you, Steve. Joke. It's all good marketing advice, actually. But nobody says Jack Endino, Zeke, Mark Lanigan, High on Fire, parentheses, for instance. Or
Mark Lanigan eventually. That's headed your way. That'll eventually creep up into the top 5.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been waiting for like 30 years for that. I love those Lanigan records. I mean, who wouldn't? They're just it's anyway, never mind. That's doesn't fit the narrative. So, sorry. But anyway, I'm still doing 99% indie rock to this day. I haven't dealt with a major label in probably decades. The biggest labels I work with there's a few metal labels who kick me work. Relapse is one. And Sub Pop calls me up when there's some archival thing that they want me to touch up that I did 30 or 40 years ago. And I'm happy to oblige. The latest was the Gits. So, but I have clients all over the world. And I could tell you who they are, but you haven't heard of them and you never will hear of them. They're random indie bands from multiple countries sending me things to master, and it's fine.
Cool. Well, thank you for that. Fisk, you're up in the alphabetical order.
Well, I'm not nearly as organized or linear as Jack. I'm a keyboard player, so that put me in a weird world already. And I was a synthesizer enthusiast. And when people should have been going to college to think about the rest of their lives, I was going to colleges to slum in recording studios, which were usually a early Moog, you know, in a 4-track or something like that. So kicking and screaming, I had to learn audio engineering just because I was dealing with large synthesizers that went out of tune all the time. And for you, those of you old enough, they only made one note at a time. So you definitely needed a multi-track machine to do anything. Okay, here's California. And you get down to Los Angeles, and there's this little kind of hillet here. Here's Pacific Ocean. There's the rest of America, or what used to be America. And then you come up from the bottom, and about 25 miles in, you hit Long Beach. That's about the point where the air doesn't keep fresh anymore. We're far enough inland that anyway, I had to get out of there, and I moved to Ellensburg when I was, early 20s. And I was never going to have anything to do with the music business, and I was just going to be a composer. And I got bored, and I ended up going to Evergreen. And at Evergreen, I met a lot of other people like me. I went to work at the college radio station. This would have been 78, 79. I learned all about independent music in America. And that's where I learned how to record punk rock bands. And we put out records for college credit, me and several friends. And some of those records have been reissued. And oh yeah, just the other day, somebody sent me the master tape of Corporate Food, the very first thing I ever got to produce. But that's another story. But yeah, so I'm kind of between this and a few other things. The past is doing this to me the last couple of days. Anyway, going past the punchy factor, independent music, they put out records, and there's a blank space where you have to say engineered by or produced by. And that's where my name went in there. And I said, really? So, yeah, Steve, you produced this. I went, well, okay, whatever. Anyway, calendar pages run forward, and eventually the Ellensburg studio closes up. Because I'm back in Ellensburg by this point. I skipped that. I went to San Francisco, joined Pell Mell. Pell Mell broke up. Moved back to Washington State, and my best friend from college, Sam Albright, had started a recording studio, which was this godhead, gigantic room. Jack's seen it. It's really just, you could record anything in there. Just beautiful. But they had an 8-track and a 12-channel console. And I befriended Mark Pickerel of the Screaming Trees because he bought a 45 of mine. And so we had a little bit of a correspondence, and I ended up recording early Screaming Trees. And the early Screaming Trees attracted a lot of attention. And so other people came over and started recording. And then I guess I was a record producer, and the studio went under. And I moved to Seattle, kicking and screaming, going, I don't want to leave Ellensburg. More and more bands are coming here. You know, had that studio in Ellensburg stayed open, it might have turned into something cool, like, you know, one down in 29 Palms or something like that. But that didn't happen. And I moved to Seattle, and I met Jack. By the way, Jack was completely like the most welcoming, open person I met in Seattle. We're recording a lot of the same bands, and he'd say, oh, this is how you do this, and this is how you do that, or this is how I did this. And I probably don't want to do that. So anyway, all the Seattle bands started making money, or at least getting attention. And various peers of mine were getting producer managers, and I got a producer manager, and he turned out to be an absolute scumbag. But we're not going to talk about that. But anyway, I did about a 6-year run as a major label whore. and it was fun, and I made a lot of money, and none of the records broke. So if you were dumb enough to hire me to do your major label record, you probably weren't going to do very well on a major label, but I did get to do a lot of good ones. And if you wanted to say, what do I want to be known for? The Geraldine Fibbers, 2 records I did for Geraldine Fibbers on Virgin. John Goodmanson was the co-producer on those records. They still sound amazing. And I don't know, that about it. Oh, I work for Scientists now. And I still produce bands, and I mix a lot.
We are going to have we are going to talk about the what life is like working with scientists at some point today, because I think there's an important thing to talk about that you're working on now. A couple of really important things that you're working on now. But John, let me, and Steve, shouldn't we also drop a couple of the larger brand names as well?
Soundgarden, Nirvana, Mudhoney.
Good. Thank you for that. I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Screaming Trees.
Yes, there you go. Thank you. John.
And there was a question. When was your first solo release, Steve?
Well, technically,
sorry,
Brian, technically, Corporate Food / Snake Attack is my first 45, but it was a studio band with me, Jim Stonecipher, and Paul Tyson. So that was called Anonymous, a very clever name for 1978, 79. My first solo crap was probably the other side of Corporate Food, which is this thing called Snake Attack. That was me in the Buchla studio at Evergreen. But there were other people, but it was mostly me.
And the Buchla studio, for those of you unfamiliar, was the world's. Did yours have the touch contact keyboard?
Yes, and that's the other thing. I got bored with Moogs, and I was a giant fan of Morton Subotnick, and Morton Subotnick works on Don Buchla's synthesizers. And Don Buchla's synthesizers are totally unlike Bob Moog synthesizers. They're kind of, this is not a slag on Moog. It's just a different thing. And that's why I went to the Evergreen State College. The fact that the Chaos radio station there was, I had no idea what that was even about. I went there so I could continue slacking at colleges playing with their synthesizers.
And that's where the good synthesizers was at colleges. And
yes.
big institutions and stuff.
Because people couldn't afford them back then. Yes, yeah. Exactly.
So, John, that's a perfect handoff. Over to you.
Ah, jeez.
Well, John was a radio person, so he knows these things.
I've been following these guys around for however many years. They were ahead of me. So I went to the Evergreen State College. My band went to Ellensburg to record with Steve. I worked at the radio station there. Was the tech guy and the music guy, and the band called Skid Row came and played at my radio show, and they turned out to be Nirvana later on. So the three of us, well, these guys for real, and me because they played on my silly radio show, threw a 6-channel Tapco mixer of the same description that Jack Endino mentioned that's in his basement and still working. So you can imagine how it sounds in a concrete box at a college radio station run by somebody who didn't know anything. So then I worked at a big studio in Seattle where my pal Steve Fisk worked and helped me get an internship, and it happened to be in 1990. So that was really lucky timing for getting stuff done. And then 93, a guy, Stuart Hollerman, and I took over the Reciprocal building, but it had been word of mouth for a little while that Rich Hinkland had, and I had it for 10 years, and I did, let's see, I wrote some stuff down so I'd remember it, because I think the things people call me about and know me for are like Slayer Kenny, Bikini Kill. I did a Harvey Danger record in there that did really well. I guess I've also done like Blonde Redhead and I don't know, Wu-Tang Clan and Brandy Carlisle, but mostly indie rock bands is kind of where my heart lies anyway. So spent time engineering for Steve Fisk during the major label Gravy days, and did more of that for a while under the same manager, Scumbag.
Step in.
Yes.
John was functionally an unpaid co-producer on all of our work together. So I was the producer and John was the engineer, but John's input was radical and clearly as important as mine. Just letting you know.
Wow.
He's a quiet guy. He doesn't take credit for the shit.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty much up to now. I don't know. I got lucky with a few things that I mixed that, you know, kept me from having to get a burger flipping job, and now it's global. And so lately I get things from Northern Europe because I guess this non-surf record that I did is doing well in Northern Europe or something. So suddenly people from Denmark and Sweden are ringing me up and mentioning that particular record. So a global market is a nice thing to have. If you've got even a little bit of a name to spread around, you'll probably find some weird pocket of people that don't speak your language but really like your records. So
I'm looking forward to, I'm still dreaming of that in my Spinal Tap in Japan moment someday, but I think you guys are there a lot before. You guys have the durability in the stuff that you've worked on, that it naturally brings stuff back and has this global reach. So one thing I wanted to ask all three of you, is there an artist that you've ever wanted to work with that you haven't had a chance to work with yet? Maybe to Jack. Actually, I'll go backwards. John, you're up first.
Oh my gosh, I don't know.
Pressure's on.
I mean, but I really love pop stuff, and during lockdown I got way into electronic production techniques, even though I sort of hate any sort of electronic dance music. So I'd be psyched to do some of that style, because I mostly do rock bands in a room, some of them with elaborate orchestration, but for the most part it's a 4-piece, somewhat shy band talking about their feelings. So
that is a coffee cup waiting to happen. How about you, Steve? Anybody you'd really love to work with that you haven't had a chance? This is your chance to reach out to them on AES radio.
There are two Japanese bands, Maximum Hormone, and I think they're maybe retired by now. They were around for 10 years on Warner Brothers. They were an indie band before that. It's a brother and a sister. The sister's kind of the boss and she's the drummer, and they do kind of metal parody send-ups where they periodically either jump into a Van Halen riff or a bad indie rock thing or something like that. So really, really, really talented stuff, really amazing production. I would probably screw it up. A much simpler Japanese band that I am a giant fan of, spell it out for you, Jyocho, Jyocho, and it's kind of jazz rock, and the lyrics are all existential and really bizarre, and it's very soft and very simmery, and like Philip Glass or Pell Mell, they'll find a thing and hold it, and then they'll move to another thing, and then they'll move back, and they're just charming as fuck. And the guitar player is one of those guys, but it doesn't get annoying. Chayocho.
Fantastic. How did you find out? How did you, as a non-Japanese speaker, how did you find those two? Unless you are a Japanese speaker.
No, chotto mate.
Yeah.
Japanese Jim taught me, because we had a Japanese client. No, actually, I found out about a Chayocho because I was watching a Japanese animation show that was all terrible adaptations of Junji Ito, who's my favorite Japanese cartoonist. He's kind of like a Japanese Rod Serling, kind of very, very weird liminal cartoons.
Jack,
and they did the closing music for it, and I said, who is this? And so
Jack, you've had the longest time to think about this. Artists that you would love to work with, I should have added as a caveat, they can be living, but maybe they aren't living anymore.
Motorhead.
Oh, Good call.
I would have known exactly what to do with that band. I have to preface this by saying that I probably have the most uncool music taste of anybody you will ever meet. And but yeah, there was a period I paid attention to Motorhead since the 70s when I saw their first album in the import bins at Peaches on the Ave, and well, across from the Rainbow actually. And I remember thinking, oh, Lemmy from Hawkwind has got a band. This could be interesting. What's this all about? And of course, it was on a tiny label called Chiswick, and you had to turn your treble knob up all the way in order for the record to sound normal because of the way it was horribly pressed. But so I followed this band for years. And there was a period when they went off the rails and their records started sounding worse and worse. And it was obviously that nobody knew how to record this band. They were too loud. I would have known exactly what to do. But eventually they found somebody who knew how to record them, and their records started sounding good again. And whatever. Anyway, I remember thinking that at a certain point I was like, damn, I should be doing this.
Yeah,
but then I wanted then and strangely enough, I got a Latin Grammy for a Brazilian pop record, which is a whole other story. But life is strange.
It's a beautiful thing. Look, all of you have had pivots in the way that you guys work, and whether it's on the technology side when we, moved from, heavy 2-inch reels of tape into the box, or whether it's in the way we create music. I'm wondering if you guys, and I'll just, rather than shooting off one at a time, I wanted to open a discussion between the three of you on a couple of things, and I'll give you some starter ideas to kind of mash between each other. Atmos or immersive audio, the use of artificial intelligence in music creation, which Steve, I'm expecting you'll have some input on. Tape versus working in the box, a regular console versus flying a mouse. Tell me about the things that you guys see that have improved and have moved in the right direction and the wrong direction, and some of the trade-offs and just sort of the transitions that you've made over the years. And are there any things that you miss, or any things that you think have been life-saving?
Can I take this one first?
Please.
I'd always bring an SM57.
Beta 58, Steve. Beta 58. Beta 58. Does anything a 57 does, but better. Anyway, I hope that I never have to go back to working with tape ever again, as long as I live, other than playing archival stuff. I switched to doing everything in the box about 20 years ago, and I ain't going back, And who encouraged me to do that was Barrett Jones, who'd already been doing it for a while. And another of the Seattle producer tribe. And being able to go back to a mix a year later, assuming I have the same Pro Tools rig and the same plugins, and being able to make a tweak, after it's astounding not having to work with masking tape on the console anymore, because I was bitterly opposed to console automation. I still am. I never was comfortable with it. Hated it. The computer systems involved were like a player piano level of technology. I recall a studio in Denmark that I worked at that was still using 8-inch floppy disks to record the automation from their SSL console. I love Pro Tools. I love digital audio recording. I love mixing in the box, and that is it's made me 10 times as productive and much faster at everything I'm doing now. And that goes for mastering as well. So
I mean, tape is kind of a dead argument, isn't it? It's like,
no, there's still people who love it.
I mean, gosh, it gets transferred straight into the thing, and the bands that ask me for it, as soon as we're halfway through tracking the first song, like realize that we can't cut and paste the chorus to chorus 3 or whatever, and they're instantly off of it. They're not, and I can cut tape like a madman, but that is knowledge that is obsolete at this point. Just to me, because the media itself is not manufactured very well, and the machines aren't maintained very well. So, it's a recording device, and if it doesn't record properly, it's lost its functionality. So, I think it's kind of a dead thing. I do like a console for basic tracking because I'm much faster making things like headphone mixes or hooking up lots and lots of inputs to be able to pick things on the fly. Like that makes that part of the session go. But that's nowadays, like such a on certain schedules, it's a really short part of the record making process that I really love. But then all the overdubs and all the lots of editing and all the mixing can certainly happen, without all that infrastructure having to be sitting right in front of you, sitting idle. Like I did get to where I felt pretty silly sitting in front of a large console and just editing drum takes. I was like, I could be doing this at home. And I started trying to build structure that way, where it was like, I'm going to do this at home and bring it in tomorrow morning and you guys can check it out because this is wasting everyone's time. So anyway.
It's look, it's a really good perspective. And thank you for that. Fisk, how about you? You're doing a lot of work with AI now. Both.
No, I'm not. I'm
Oh,
working
you're
for
not.
somebody involved in AI. I'm not using AI very much at all. You're probably using AI more than I am.
That is frightening. I will admit I am using AI because I have really mediocre chops as a musician, but I still write and arrange. So when I have things to get down, I am indeed singing and dictating them into AI to get temp tracks out that then get, baked out to transcription.
Yeah, to answer your question completely, I'm finishing a second record for Desdemona's Dream Band, which is the pet project of Ben Gertzel, who's a giant AI figure. And somebody I kind of respect. He's not a kid. He knows what he's doing. And he's having fun with AI. He's more like Ken Kesey, trying to get something funny at the other end of the machine or something like that. And yeah, there's a robot in the band, and she sings. And
There's that. There's a robot in the band, so I guess.
Yeah, I guess there's a robot in the band. But it takes a nation of millions to make the robot work. It's not freestanding robot. It's a theatrical presentation, and she's wonderful. And I've been a big part of helping her sing. So when the robots take over, you can blame me.
When you tell us what you mean by helping her sing.
There are coders. Do I sound condescending? I'm sorry. There are coders that take the lyrics and make the finished singing bot vocals. So for a period of time, the bot was just talking. But when they started playing with singing, they were modeling or after this and that and the other thing. But I get them, and it's sort of like Margaret Dumont. That's the singer from the old Marx Brothers movies, where it's, I have an idea and I am going to sing. And it's kind of like da, 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 da. And I went in like, well, I can't sing at all, but let's put a dot over this one and turn that into this and do that. And so I help her sing more naturally. And it's actually, she doesn't have a gender. She's kind of both.
So you help them sing more naturally.
But with editing, and then also I play around with Little Ultra Boy, a wonderful plugin, and I kind of double things and move things around, or occasionally give her a harmony or something like that. But real rudimentary stuff, but I'm good at it. And because I've been messing with voices since 1979, this isn't easy, but it's pretty cool.
Immersive audio.
Well, and to answer Dan Mortensen, go find Don't Let It Get You Down on YouTube by Desdemona's Dream
Oh,
Band.
I will
Put that in the chat.
Into the chat.
And yeah, it's interesting. I've done a few soundtracks for the Experience Music Project / EPSFM / Mopop. And while I did have a few other connections that turned out with Paul Hubert and JJ and Immersion Audio, I got a tour out there and got to meet all those guys as a connection through the EMP.
Through the EMP?
EMP / Mopop. And I think it might have been the Mopop by then. Why are you waving your hands?
Who called you and asked you to come out?
What?
Never mind.
Well, no, Jason Emmons and Brad Perky, actually. No, I'm getting there, Jim. So they had an online version of the technology, and I went in there with the intention of remixing a Pigeon Head record and the Jesse Bernstein Prison record, and it was going well. And then Jim Rondinelli, in the meantime, had gone to work for those guys after being a consultant for several years. And he invited me out there, says, Steve, why don't you just mix it on site? We got enough downtime in the room. So for close to 2 years, I drove from Tacoma to Redmond, and I couldn't put in a proper engineer's day because there were business hours. So I had to be out of there by 6 or 7, and I couldn't start till 11. So there's a kvetch. And I learned a lot.
But we saved your ears because you didn't burn your ears out with 12 or 14-hour listening days.
That's right. So light duty on the ears, listen to a lot of podcasts. And does anybody know about neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity? It kind of changed how I hear. It's a little unfortunate, but it's also kind of cool. I did have a dull spot over here because when I was in Pell Mell, I played keyboards and my synthesizer amp was here and the cymbals were there. So this side was a little down. I know we're not supposed to confess these things in the audio community. But
Jack does really well with keeping people honest about how your left and right are probably not the same, no matter what you say.
Exactly. No, it's okay. It's okay. But
it's true. I wired the left-right swap button into the console at Soundhouse for that reason.
It's a beautiful idea.
Brilliant.
Yeah. And I flip left and right all the time. But the point of my spiel, and you just have to trust me on this because no one else can get inside my head except me. Things are wider, things are brighter, things are deeper. And when I asked Jim about it, he says, oh yeah, that happens. I'm well, fuck you. No one warned me. You know,
from doing immersive audio.
Yes, from doing immersive audio. And then when I asked JJ about it, sorry, I'm talking over you. When I asked JJ about it, he says, oh yeah, that happens. So why didn't anybody warn me? They said you wouldn't be the first ingrate I've run into.
It's like you're never going back to your low res 72 or 720p TV or whatever because
when I listen to a phone, it sounds like it goes from here to here. I don't have a brain tumor. I don't microdose.
Or macrodose for that matter.
Or macrodose. So that's I'm sorry, that's a funny story, but it's true.
That's another band name waiting to happen, macrodose. But you know, it is an interesting thing because when we would listen a lot in that platform, after people train their ears to hear it, they would start hearing things spatially differently. And the funniest thing is we found where we had test subjects who had come out of the school for the blind, who had to neuro adapt their processing for safety purposes so they could hear and perceive where threats were coming from around them. Those people were extraordinarily good at picking up all types of audio artifacts in the development of that platform.
Wow, that's a crazy data set.
It was a trip. Here's another one. Some of those people could perceive 28K.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Also, one of the robot techs has a hearing impairment. And when I was working on the last record, he and I ended up bored and sharing notes all the time. There's all kinds of new work going on for the blind, dealing with haptics and all kind. We're finding out the blind are kind of like superheroes. They have all these things that we don't even understand that they use to get around with, and it's not worth diving into right now, but I've been trying to get that guy hooked up with JJ for about 6 months. I think they've got some debriefing they need to do.
And there is a link of Desdemona's Dream Band, the singing robot, in the chat if anybody'd like to take it down.
And AI was not used in the composition of anything except maybe the lyrics, but probably not a lot. Oh, and it's an AI video. So it's state-of-the-art AI with the inventor's daughter fooling around with anything I suppose was in the editing suite. It's a beautiful video, but yeah, it's all people. It's much more like Pink Floyd or Miles Davis or something. You know?
So wanting to kind of start a fight, because that's what, in my role as a journalist for this evening, and that's what journalists seem to like to do these days, is start inflammatory arguments and get both sides going against each other. Did I hear somebody on the chat make a loud or grunt when I mentioned the word immersive or Atmos?
I was going to ask you could make the distinction between those two, because
yes,
one's marketing.
Atmos is a discount program on Alaskan Airlines, I think.
Right. I mean, their brand is going to be super diluted by that Alaska Rewards program, because everybody's going to know that. But like the Atmos part of the equation seems, number one, really specific to exhibit spaces, and the Atmos music delivery, like I really, and Apple's, so I do the Apple ecosystem. So Apple's trying to market it as spatial audio, basically using it to sell hardware. And so I would get these questions from labels about doing spatial audio mixes. And as soon as we discussed it, even for a little bit, they decided they didn't want to do it. So nobody asks me for splits or Atmos versions of anything. And like when I've done soundtrack stuff, I deliver that as quad stuff, but the final mixer takes that and puts it into whatever format they're mixing for. I mean,
quad, not 5.
I just did that because I don't know if that's common practice or not, but I just heard stay out of the subs, that's for explosion, stay out of the voice in the middle because that's for dialogue. So easy enough. I'll just do quad and kick it down to them. They can pan it wherever they want if they want to run a little into the sub or whatever. But everything I read was like mixers for screen will wind up muting your music tracks that are on the center channel and on the 0.1 anyway. So even if you put something there, they're not going to use it. They'll do what they want with it. So that's fine. But I mean, it seems like a good concept for that because it adapts to whatever your number of channels you have for your playback, right? So that seems like a solid idea for exhibition audio. The translation to binaural didn't really work very well, and Apple's handling of the launch and the way they treated artists and stuff like that, and the way they treated indie labels really left a bad taste. And
I was going to say the primary difference between Atmos and immersion, and admittedly, I don't have a lot of Atmos experience, is it seems like Atmos doesn't translate where immersion does.
To headphones, you mean?
Well, actually, immersion sounds beautiful on speakers. It doesn't sound 3D. You don't get things behind you, but immersion is a new audio platform. It is a new audio language. And that sounds like so much horseshit. And of course, who's going to even hear it now that Spotify owns the patents? But yeah, between the expanded diaspora of audio and also how it sounds on headphones and also how it sounds on real monitors, it's a whole new thing. Nobody's playing Atmos on regular speakers. They say it sucks and it's too quiet. You know, immersion sounds very good on regular speakers. And unlike audio, it's very, very different. So anyway, I'm just sound like a snake oil guy. I got nothing to sell you. Yeah, I think immersion is a superior audio format to Atmos and very different than stereo. And It's not going to replace anything,
Uh,
but I sure hope the world gets to hear it at some point.
Rod just asked a great question. Are any of you doing standard 5.1 LRC, LFE channels, left side, right side, or because there are so many players out there to play it? And I will add to that one thing from experience. Apple, who wants you to have a spatial audio version and have now developed their own spatial audio format to replace Atmos, which is interesting, which seems to be in the trend. Apple spatial audio for those guys, Eclipse, which is going to be Google and YouTube, and then Spotify purchased the immersion assets, and we can kind of see everything kind of splitting out that way. One thing I'll add for Rod is that the common denominator between all of that stuff is that they start in 7. Basically you can take a 7 or a 7.1 and deliver to all of them pretty convincingly. But Jack brought up a really good point, and Jack and I should cue this up a little. When Atmos first came out, Apple and Dolby contributed a significant amount of money to the major label rights holders for them to create content and Atmos specific mixes and to get the ball rolling, which lasted for 3 years. But there was a problem with it. It didn't filter its way down, or very few of those dollars filtered down to the 30%, the most diffuse 35% or 40% of the market by today's statistics. Jack, do you want to talk about that?
I still don't think there's enough of an economic model for any of it to work. There's no consumer demand for it to any, I mean, yeah, there may be players, people with home theater systems can listen to it. It's exciting to hear it, but nobody wants to pay for the extra mixing time. Frankly, on the indie level, nobody cares. Everybody's listening in earbuds. We've been talking about quad since the early 70s. I mean, people were trying to do quad mixes of records in 1972. There's still no consumer demand for it, enough for it to really truly be a mass market medium. It's my take on it. I've been waiting for this. I've been basically like, okay, it's top down. They're doing this. The technology's great, but nobody asked for it. And they're still not asking for it. And nobody wants to pay for the extra work to make the mixes. And where are you going to recoup that from? The artist is going to end up paying for it out of pocket. They're never going to recoup any of it. And as a sales thing, who's buying them? So it's still niche. It may be amazing, but the economic model does not work unless you're Steve Miller or the Eagles or Pink Floyd.
3D
or Elton John.
3D TV, I believe, is the metaphor from the visual world. So, but then again, I can also argue that, and Fisk, you might support me on this, or you may not, but a lot of people haven't had the benefit of hearing it actually work.
Yes, there's that. I got a 2-part answer. And this is a Jack Endino quote. When a song is stuck in your head, what format is it? And that's probably a short form of it, but it doesn't really matter. Music is music.
Oh, that's a good one.
99.9% of what I do is mixed on these 2 speakers and the 2 speakers right on top of them. I've been playing with quad I've been listening to quad since it was in the Licorice Pizza record stores, and they were playing Neil Young records where the bass was over there and the drums were over there, and clearly a bunch of stoners were just playing with the pan knobs. But stereo in the olden days was 3 speakers, and there was one in the center, and they got rid of that one for economic reasons. But the whole idea of reproducing a live performance where shit happens in front and then in back is the sound of the whole. Well, that's the original idea with audio engineering. It's classical and jazz and all of this other stuff. So in that universe, I think immersive audio makes some kind of sense. Yes, there's no demand for it. And the way it was foisted upon the public via Apnos was a guaranteed failure, and probably had a bit to do with the failure of immersion, if immersion is considered a failure at this point. It might be too early to say that.
Well, look, look. On one hand, I'm super grateful that Dolby got people talking about audio, because when you think about it, the way audio was distributed hadn't really changed since AAC was developed by JJ in '97, right? And that's 20 years of research of 79 or earlier till '97. And guess what? A lot of people are still using that file or variations of it today, despite the fact that we can encode audio way better than we had the compute horsepower to do when JJ was doing it.
It's a sad joke that we all settle for streaming audio, especially considering the politics of it these days. It's just a joke. It's just
yes. Well, I'm yes, and that and our take on the late Steve Albini's Maximum Rock and Roll article brought to 2026 should be a topic that we rant about next year. But I want to hit a couple of questions that are in the queue. One that I want to pick up as a comment for Rod, Rod states he thinks in terms of the idea that you have 2 ears but only one voice. So I want to just hit that from the technical perspective for a second. When Steinberg and Snow originally introduced the papers on what they referred to then as solid sound, and which eventually became more than mono audio, became now what we call stereo, they actually specifically called in 1931 for a third speaker. But the problem with it was that the delivery formats couldn't keep up with the third channel. But there are a whole bunch of things you can do with placement and unmasking when you have that third center channel. So it's worth experiencing if you ever have the chance. Bob Smith mentions, I think very wisely, headphone listening is the huge target market at this time. And pick up a little comment on that yes, and 75% of the headphone market or more is wireless, which means we're going through the crappy Bluetooth codec, which also means we're concatenating codecs, which, as JJ has beaten into all of us, is kind of the kiss of death, to have two different decisions of what data you throw out while trying to keep one audio image at the end of it. For Brian, what is immersion? So Immersion Networks was a research and development lab that existed here in Seattle for about 10 years. I worked there. I don't know that we have any other immersioids here. Steve worked there for a while as a consultant as well, Steve Turnage. Do we have anybody else who is here? No. And then Steve Fisk was sort of our artist in residence, if you will. But it was basically untethered, or some might say unhinged, research project to create a better sounding audio delivery platform. First, Origin was an entirely different way to do immersive audio that's based not on amplitude panning, like turn left up, turn right up, and end up with an image somewhere in the middle, but on delay panning, because the real origin of panning and localization is the time it takes to a sound to get to this ear as opposed to this ear, and that's how we localize.
Which is extraordinarily obvious if you think about it, and the whole basis for these things have got to be tiny time delays, and in many, just a whole matrix of tiny time delays creating this immersion thing. I think people need to remember this about panning, that panning the way we usually use it on a console is kind of phony because it's amplitude only. Carry on.
Yeah. Oh no. But Tom, could you elaborate on your question? But frequency dependent, yes. Could you elaborate on what you're asking there so we can do a better job answering?
Sure, but isn't that true that we, for directionality, we use the amplitude time cues and the time cues and the amplitude cues differently at different frequency ranges?
Yes.
Yeah.
Low frequency is inherently omnidirectional, but you can still perceive, which is an interesting thing. In a delay-based platform, you can still localize movement in a low frequency, and that was one of the things that JJ uncracked that kind of floored me. I was not expecting that.
Cool. Thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank you, and thank you for popping on to further, so we further understood your question.
Well, it's the Helmholtz chart, right? You know, we got more sensitivity in the upper mids than we do in the bottom and the top. And this brings my one silly point to this. Hearing is how we got to the present. We can't bite. We can't run. Perceived threat and hearing things behind us. That's what got us to the present. Otherwise, humanity wouldn't even exist. I'm sorry, there's some Bible people here today. God bless you. But this, the family walking in the forest, not all of them, but some of them figured out shit, tiger or food or whatever. And it's all hearing, just like dogs, just like bats. So it's not a pretty thought, but I think we're closer to those people than we really acknowledge. JJ had a whole thing about bats and hats and how quickly, if you take off a hat, your hearing completely adapts to the world like that. So our hearing is very, very complicated. So what?
Yeah. Well, no, it's an important point. I just want to take that opportunity to dunk on personalized HRTFs, because yes, your HRTF changes when you put a hat on, but you can still hear where things are coming from. So,
yes.
Dunking on that, on that concept, just a second.
And the earlobes too, like Jack pointed out in the chat. Yeah, everybody's earlobes do something different. So the hearing is personal. The idea that we have a music industry based on shared experience is ridiculous.
Well, and Jack, one of the funny things we found when doing audio testing on that stuff was every once in a while we'd walk into a room with somebody who'd be an important decision maker, and the first thing I would do is I would look at their head and I'd know if their pinna were way back and they had a wider front of the head that kind of shaded the back of their head, we were going to have a tough demo. Because if we were demoing in speakers, they wouldn't be able to localize.
I've got to tell you a story, which was that apparently when I was born, and for the first 4 years of my life, my ears stuck out at almost perfect 90-degree angles from my head. And there's pictures of me as a little tiny guy, and I looked like Alfred E. Newman from Mad Magazine. And my parents got this surgery where they sliced a piece of flesh out of the back of each ear, and I had to wear this football helmet. I was 5 years old, you know, and so it's, what if I still had those ears, aside from the fact that my life would have been incredibly painful with people making fun of me on the street. But what would that have meant for me as a record producer?
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
Jack,
yes,
we've known each other a long time. I too was born with those ears.
Did you get the operation?
My father had the same ears.
Oh my goodness.
He was a school teacher, but we had Blue Cross insurance, and they were so empowered with their Blue Cross insurance, and they wanted to see what they could do for their fucked up 10-year-old kid that was getting picked on for a million reasons besides my ears. So all we did is prove that it wasn't my ears.
By the way, take a look, and this is something I've noticed since doing that. So I sat down with Greg Talby, the mastering engineer, who I used to do a lot of work with, and I try to see him regularly when I go to New York. And one of the last dinners I noticed, and I'd never noticed this before, that he has those ears. Right. And then I look back at pictures of other mastering engineers, Howie Weinberg, he has those, so anyway, so who knows?
Chad Blake,
another one.
Yeah. And he's another one that'll tell you his hearing is completely ruined because he grew up firing guns in Texas. So this ear.
Yeah.
And he flips headphones and flip sides. And
But as you know, we learn to adapt around that stuff. We're at about an hour and 5 minutes in, and what maybe one of the things I'd like to do with the last chunk of time that we have is bounce some things off of you, and maybe starting with you, John, since we haven't heard from you for a couple of minutes. Where do you see all this going? I mean, are you working more now? Are you working less now? Are people still interested in music? It seems like the gaming thing has died down. Do you see any musical trends, or anything pervasive in the type of artists that are approaching you these days?
I mean, I think I have always worked for bands more than labels, and I just happened to get lucky in a few things. So I think I've got plenty to do, but there's less and less money, because there's less and less return on sales, basically. So, there's some kind of return for songwriters for the intellectual property part of it, and there's return for touring, but it's pretty hard to justify a large recording budget. So you're, at least in my end of the world, it's always like, yeah, we can make that happen. We just have to think creatively about doing it in a economic way. So it is a little bit sad that so much of it is strictly computer based, because it was so much fun with consoles and the smell of tape was wonderful and everything. And there's fewer and fewer places that have the infrastructure built out to be able to quickly go in and do it. But I don't have a room anymore, because I can get a great room for $250 a day that's got, some huge leftover console that I don't have to maintain. There's enough crazy rich guys that think owning a recording studio would be awesome. That if you're okay, but I mean, the thing is, there's not professional facilities like there used to be. So you'll have to deal with stuff that's broken. You'll have to deal with insane wiring things. But if you know the place well enough, you can get around and get your work done. But it's a lot more like that. It's a lot more piecemeal, at least for me. And I just seem like, man, there's just a race to the bottom of how cheap people can do mixes in particular.
Well, Fisk had a great quote. Do you remember the thing you told me so many years ago, Steve?
No, Jim.
About the pencil. This is a direct Steve Fisk quote. And this was you told this to me in 1996 to 8, somewhere in there, you said.
You have a great memory, Jim.
Well, yeah, but fading, but it was somewhere in that window. The line you said to me was, it's amazing how the cost of making records is coming down. We don't have to, pay the studio $200 for a reel of 2-inch anymore, and it's getting less and less expensive, so more and more people have access to recording. The art form that has the lowest cost to entry, it's being a poet. You can do your job with a
I've heard
pencil.
I've heard this rant as well.
Yeah, a pencil and a piece of paper. Oh, by the way, when's the last time you heard a poet who was making a good living? Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Fisk.
I mean, but there is the.
I should be writing books. I shouldn't be doing this. Sorry, John.
But no, but people need like human connection and to go to gigs, and there's a reaction sort of afoot against how manufactured so much consumable music is around or whatever. But the economics of it are definitely like, it's pretty rough. And then in soundtrack world, I don't know if you do. Well, you're kind of using it to your advantage, Jim. It sounds like. But especially during lockdown and stuff, I kind of wanted to get my ability to do soundtrack stuff up to scratch, and wound up working on a few different like movie things. But it's become clear with how well the AI works that they're going to be temping up all the edits with AI temp music. So you're going to be stuck, doing sound-alikes of somebody's AI prompt, which doesn't seem very inspiring. But yeah.
Yeah, I want the same feel that the robot gave me.
Right. Right? Like, you know, at least before they were thrown in top 40 tracks that they couldn't afford. And so,
Yeah, so like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. Call Donald Fagen.
right. Yeah.
Ethan Camp just brought a great question in. A question for you greener grads. Can you please share your craziest studio story from your college days? For full disclosure, I'm the current studio manager at TESC. And for all three of you, dare I ask, what advice would you give to the current crop of audio engineering students at our hallowed Institute of Higher Education, Evergreen State College?
Well, I had one.
John, you recorded Nirvana while you were driving between dormitories.
But no, that's a conflagration of two of them or whatever. But I did have to jump in the car while I was broadcasting something from the CAD building that was a live gig, and I got in the car, which often subs to mono with a low wattage transmitter, and one of the cables feeding the stereo feed was out of phase, so it canceled out completely anything that went to the center. But I brushed back and fixed that straight away. But I had a band over in the comm building all set up to do. It was probably the first time I tried to do like a fancy room for a band that was playing live on the air, and something went sideways and they couldn't get a hold of the guy with the keys to go and like restart the console. So I hauled the band back over to the radio station, reset up. They started playing on the air and broke up live on the air. Which was pretty awesome. So every time they stopped playing a song, you'd hear guys arguing, and then they would count off and click into another song. And over the course of half a dozen songs, it got more and more violent, and then they broke up live. And that was, Steve, you recorded the band. It was Slim Moon's band called Lush.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a pretty good evening.
They were a pretty good band.
Yeah, it was a little bit sad.
They opened for Skinyard once at the Community World, and I remember really liking
it. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
really wonderful lyrics. Yeah,
speaking of a poet.
Yeah, Slim Moon. Okay, I've just got a technical story, but we didn't have graduate theses at Evergreen, especially in your fourth year. There's no graduate nonsense in a preschool. But I had a piece, it was, I think, 8 minutes long, and it was for live musicians with quad tape backup. And I could go into the compositional theory, but it doesn't matter. The point of it is that we had a place with a giant change in it, and so I built a riser in quad. And we didn't call them risers back then, but we were playing with tape speed. And I was working with this amazing drummer, Dave Christensen, who lives a few blocks from me here in Tacoma now. And he could do a press roll. And if you all know what a press roll is, that's what the drummer does in the circus when someone's on the high wire. So we're coming up to this transition, and we're doing a press roll that, like Bohemian Rhapsody, is adding on in pieces. So the song's bang, 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 one speaker, one speaker, one speaker. And we build to the change, and it's
they were all
piling on top of each other. And by the time it was done, it's 13 press rolls. And we did them all by VSOing the 16 track. And then when we ran out of room, we'd bounce two of them together and they'd be stuck in the back or whatever. But that was Pangean in its importance.
Randall,
but it might be the weirdest thing I did there, besides frying hamburgers for the anonymous single that we might have mentioned earlier.
Jack, do you want to drop a crazy story? And if you prefer to keep the artist name anonymous, it's all fine. But if you want to out them, it's all good too.
I don't think I have anything to add to that, actually. I got nothing.
Well, let me.
You know-
I had one that I still have PTSD from. It was a band that was two brothers, one other guy, and a woman. And the woman was romantically involved with one brother, and became romantically involved with the other brother instead during the course of the album, which made for some really freaking weird times at the studio, to say the
What could
least.
go wrong? I mean,
Right. What a
Oh my
great
God.
idea.
There was just love. Yeah, and I'm in this with a 20 by 25-foot room with that for other people.
But that's the gig, man.
Well,
Yeah,
and I have
that
a
is
Jumping into, Steve always said it was like a episode of Quantum Leap. Like you jump into a whole other set of problems. And then we'd be like halfway through the record and he'd be like, I've solved all their problems. I still don't understand why I haven't leapt out of here. There must be something I still have to do.
Back to my other advice for those of you studying at Evergreen or elsewhere, interested in music, clinical psychology classes can be super useful.
And I'd say check shit out of Media Alone and take it home and learn to run it really well, whether it's a laser or a digital delay line or anything like that. It's a great time to learn to love hardware. And while everybody else is taking mushrooms and frolicking in the spring, fucking study, fucking work on your craft. I didn't have any fun at Evergreen. I was already a workaholic. Sam Albright, the Ellensburg guy, had taught me to be a workaholic. So I was a little older than most of the Evergreeners, and I had a rich library of shit I'd already done, and I showed up with 2 synthesizers that I bought myself with the blood of my hands, So anyway, I was much more of a libertarian hard ass in Evergreen than all of those clove smoking, beret wearing, leotarded, intellectuals that were my brethren there at the time. So yeah, read K-pop magazine. Don't take it too seriously, but read K-pop magazine just so you got a bunch of opinions in your life. Get out of your thing, I don't know. I don't have
Matt,
any
you have
really.
a BSEE?
yeah, it's true.
That's awesome.
Graduated in December 1980 and worked at the Naval Shipyard in Bremerton for 2.5 years as a civilian electrical engineer.
That I knew.
And
Actually, that part.
got the hell out. And the next time I actually earned any money that I owed any taxes on was 1986 at Reciprocal Recording.
That's quite a good run. And for those of you who are doing better than us, that's because we're under the threshold, not because we have really good tax preparers. Records.
Yeah, gosh, I teach. I wish I could give you better advice. I teach high school right now, a few months out of the year, and they're music people and audio engineers. And I don't think I've got any, bon mots, I tell them, tell them everything they know is wrong. That's a good thing to start with. Tell them everything they know about the music business is wrong. Don't watch Fantano. Yeah, I'll shut up. Sorry.
If
Don't
somebody
quit
tells
your
you
day job.
Yeah, don't quit. Here's what I tell them.
I've told them that.
Yeah, I said I got a job at the Music Source because I could solder.
Right.
So in 1989, when the Ellensburg studio closed its doors, Peter Barnes gave me a job at the Music Source, and I had a key to the place, and that's where, all deference to Jack, that's where I recorded some of these bands for the first time on 24-track 2-inch tape. Exactly. Not that I did better, I was still learning my craft. I don't think I knew how to mix in 1990.
MCI machines, Steve. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no. You had a nicer machine, a truer machine. But Music Source had history and, the Wheatles Groove and all this other shit. So it should have been a good studio, but it had been a bad studio for a long time. So they'd let a lot of stuff slip. And the money had turned into other stuff. It was a great place to work, fine place to work, but not a great place to record Soundgarden. You know,
We could tell horror stories of the Euphonics console, Steve.
yes, I had 2 sessions to use the Euphonics console to mix somebody from out of town, and both times it crashed, and they couldn't get it working again. Euphonics, does everybody remember Euphonics?
Oh, yes.
Analog digital hybrid of the 90s.
Yes.
Digitally controlled analog resettable console. Had some great ideas. You know, all the cards lived in a rack, and the control surface was just a control surface. And then there was the software. The software was evolving.
Was
little buggy.
evolving, to say the least. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack,
I was mixing the Grunt Truck Push album with Gary King at the Music Source, and we were going.
Which I was the assistant on, by the way.
Oh my goodness!
So probably
you know
what happened. It was my fault for sure.
It sounded great. The thing worked. The EQs sounded pretty good. I mean, it really, we were getting good results. And I remember in the middle of doing one particular song, the console just crashed, and we lost the mix and had to start over from scratch.
That was the thing. The control surface idea is great until when you lose something, you lose it completely. Like on an SSL or something, if it's just the faders, you can get it back relatively quickly. But on the Euphonics, you lose all of it, and you're back to zero, nothing. Like you're back to just starting.
Just a piece of 2-inch with SMPTE on it. That was basically okay.
That was a tough. Yeah, that was a tough sell. I think I was in charge of. Barnes put me in charge of figuring it out and trying to pitch it to people. So it was a tough spot a few times, more than once.
There was a wonderful band called the 360s. They're from Salem. They were kind of like a Screaming Trees 3-piece with a Patti Smith lead singer. And we recorded them at Bearsville. Yes, the Bearsville. And that was a whole learning experience. But we got to mix it on the Euphonics at the Music Source. And one of the things they did, one of the things that guaranteed they would be buried on this record, is they did a 10+ minute like psychedelic jam called Nighttime Angel Candy. That was a bunch of feedback and breaking shit and jams and a kind of a poem that broke apart and turned into this thing. And so John and I just went nuts, you know, and we were like this, and we were about like an hour into it and just doing elaborate panning, you know, 9 minutes in and all this crazy stuff. And John looked at me and says, "You realize you can't do this on other boards. This is a new thing, what we're doing right here. We're like an hour into this, and this is completely insane. We've like but you know, on Pro Tools, it's nothing, right? Anybody can."
Well, and your thing with dub, your appreciation of dub stuff, all that stuff worked beautifully on that console. And you
Thank you. Yes, I'm still a giant dub fan. I learn more about it every year. Probably some of you do too. That's one of the nice things about the internet. But the point of it is that Euphonics was a great, great idea. And God bless Jim Wolf for trying to make it work, you know, but it didn't.
It sounded good.
That was
like a big DBX. It had a DBX level of punch, you know, the onboard compressors, everything. It was very good. The image record that you're remixing was originally mixed on one of those.
Oof.
His opinion just changed.
Who is remixing the? Which one of you is remixing the image record?
Me.
Oh, that's so.
There's an entire album's worth of remixed, remastered image now, but the band is negotiating amongst themselves, I think.
And who recorded the original image session?
I think it was you.
And who else?
Who else? No, the original image session was I think Rolf Bertig.
No. I'm talking about the one that got them dropped. I'm talking about the one on London Bridge. It was me and John Goodmanson. It was my first major label gig. And my first 3 major label gigs were fucked. And Image was just a great example about how things can go wrong. The next record was the 360s. The other one I was talking about, and then after that was this Irish band that had to deal with an English record label, Stum. It's where Christian McNeil came from. But yeah, I should have stopped right then. Right then and there, you know.
Well, you know, I did a Bruce Dickinson record, and the record label went out of business right before it was released. I did a Tad record, and the band got dropped from Elektra right as the record was shipping. I did a Therapy album in 1999 and got a call from the mastering engineer a few months later saying that he couldn't reach anybody at the record label to get paid. And I got a personal check from Miles Copeland to pay for the mastering.
Wow.
And the label went out of business. And so, you know, yeah, these things happen.
Do you remember Triple Fast Action?
Yes.
Yeah, I went to work at Sears Sound in New York, and they were just finishing up, and they were in the process of being wished into the cornfield. So they were finished working with the record, but they already knew they'd been dropped, and there'd be zero promotion going into it. The 360s got no promotion in Boston because the lead singer's ex-boyfriend was the station manager.
Uh-oh.
The music,
the
music director, even worse, the music director.
Like
Ron St. Germain, a Jewish guy.
Ron St. Germain?
A Jewish guy that changed his name for broadcast. Ron St. Germain? No. It was George St. Germain. I'm sorry.
Different
old
guy.
man shit. But yeah, and when you see all the pictures of like unfortunate Nirvana promotion, it's like Chris sitting there going, oh, and Kurt sitting there, and George St. Germain's got his arm around him going, hi, I'm with Nirvana. That's the guy that stopped the 360s record from coming in. You see how it's all connected. You see why it's hopeless from the beginning.
That was one of the things I hated the most about that job, is especially in the end of the 90s when I stepped out, is like so many records would be finished and then dropped, or, you know, only some small percentage of would be used. But the upside of that in one case was A&M dropped Matthew Sweet, and they gave us the record with no override. And
right, yeah, every once in a while one of those would happen. I mean, that's your Wilco story, but the movie's about, basically.
Oh yeah, I was around for that. that was an uncomfortable time.
By the way, the dirty secret that we haven't said out loud is that when John Goodmanson got up on his hind legs and started doing bigger gigs than what he could do with me, Jim and I started working together. So Jim and I have several records. So we've been in the trenches all around.
I was the replacement for John.
Yes.
John's protege.
Nothing like that. You guys are nothing like each other. But it was just a blessing to work with either of you. And, you know, but anyway, I just thought it was
Jim, you were the connection to the warehouse studio, right? Like, did you live in Vancouver?
I've spent most of 94 to 99 making records there, because at the time studios in New York were $2,000 a day plus outboard, sometimes 2,500 if you wanted to work at the Hit Factory.
Right.
And at the warehouse, because it was slow, first they had the world's best maintenance. I swear, this guy, John Vertasic, and
I concur.
Ron Obvious, who's an old punk rock guy, but Ron Vermeulen's his actual name. They had amazing maintenance. They had a Neve, they had an SSL, they had a ridiculous mic locker, and
They had a George Martin Neve, a special Neve.
They had one of the last 4 Neves, Air Montserrat,
Jesus
Air
Christ,
Oxford Circus, Atlantic, and A&M, and they had what was the Atlantic Neve. But they had also, and the console's still running today, there's, if you look at the right side, you notice that, wow, the knob configuration is different, because they packaged 8 SSL E-Series modules in there and made it look exactly like a Neve.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, and then the other thing is there's an SSL compressor in the center section, which they modded for me. It's if you turn it all the way to the right, past the 1 second attack time or whatever it is, it has a super long attack and a super long release with a low ratio. Anyway, that's the type of stuff they would do. They were just fabulous. But the best part was it was $500 to $800 a day.
Oh my God!
Days off, I could be up here. So, you know, as a New York, and I always wanted to live up here, so I'm really grateful to be part of the AES Pacific Northwest chapter. And
Camp is rad, and you can't trust what YouTube's going to turn into. So I'm getting ready to do some podcasts with people, and I'm suggesting we put it on Bandcamp and just have links on Instagram, because it seems like YouTube is probably going to be changing in the next few years, and we have no control over that. Where Bandcamp seems to sound okay, nothing sounds good, but Bandcamp sounds okay, and obviously the artist gets paid. John, you want to check in on Bandcamp?
No, I'm not hip at the moment to where things are.
You'll make dozens of dollars.
Ain't that the truth? Man, yeah, that's the.
So, last question from Luke, and then maybe we'll do some wind up here. Comments on working with Harvey Danger, and should we talk about their manager, or should we just talk about the artist?
So it's my fault that I hooked him up with Andy, and it was the worst professional decision I made my entire life. It was just awful.
I told the Gits to work with Daniel House.
It's another bad idea. Yeah. So the Harvey Danger story is they showed up wanting to make an album for $800 at John and Stu's place, and I said, well, why don't we make a few song demo and try to get, you guys are like kind of poppy, it seems like we could get somebody to do a record. They did that once. The local rep for London Records or something gave them a demo deal, but then she moved out of town, so we did another batch of songs that way. And then somebody called the guy that had Arena Rock Recording Company, which was like a tiny baby indie, but he was a wannabe A&R guy for London. He said, how much can I give you to finish this thing? So we made the record for $1,500. We got pressed with like 600 hand silkscreen colors, and then Marco Collins started playing it on the radio, and it went bananas. And there was a big old bidding war, and it was as much of a shit show as every behind the music you've ever watched. So read the liner notes on the vinyl reissues, because Sean is one of the best writers in any genre, but particularly when talking about rock music, and does a beautiful job of explaining exactly everything that went on. That's a quick summary of Harvey Danger.
That is a great plug. That is a great because that's a great reason to go out and get that album, actually.
I mean, we did get to make a second record at Bearsville when we had big money, and that one, I used to say that second record, which got buried in merger world that happened right at exactly the same time. Every band I ever gave that record to hired me to make their album. So you can imagine that it's very artist friendly.
Note to self, I got to get some copies of that record and tell people I made it.
And then eventually they came back and did another record a dozen years later, and me and Steve did that one up at Robert Lang's studio.
Where I'd like to add, I sat on my hands 90% of the time. John did the whole thing. There wasn't a way in. John already knew the band too well. And so I had some interesting ideas, and they're on the record. But it was already its own thing, so I got overpaid to contribute to that record. It's
they were really happy having you there, for sure.
Yeah, there's a few songs that got some attention that I did at Soundhouse, but they're great. And John got the most amazing drum sound there from a drummer that's a medium hitter, but it sounds like Capitol Studios. But they figured out a way to put them in the booth, but then mic up the giant empty space with stereo 87s, and it just worked. The songs were the right tempo, and it just record sounds gothic, which is kind of why you go out there. But it's usually the main room that gives you the gothic, that crazy space out there. It's kind of nuts. Anyway, John's got that place dialed.
Hey, wrapping up, three things, a plug from each of you. Jack, do you indeed have a subscription channel on Bandcamp?
Well, Bandcamp is based on having subscribers. I mean, anyone can look at your Bandcamp page and play a song, but people can be, you can have a user account or an artist account. If you have an artist account, you're posting albums, you're posting your music. If you're just a user, a consumer, you have an account basically as a listener that makes it you give them your PayPal account and so forth. That basically facilitates your being able to buy music more easily from Bandcamp by being one of the having a user account. So people subscribe and you basically get to send out a little newsletter here and there, and everybody who's officially subscribed to your site, to your Bandcamp site, will hear about it. So I posted an old record from a band I used to be in the other day, and it's like 400 something subscribers. They all got a little message blast saying, "Hey, I just posted this thing from 2007. Check it out." And I sold like 3 of them. But the model works on some level.
Other projects that you're working on now that you'd like to tell us to keep an eye out as that are coming up?
Who are you talking to?
You, Jack, first, and I'm going to ask the same question for Steve and John. Last shot. Plug what the next thing we'll hear. Plug the next thing we'll hear from you.
It's probably going to be in another country, and you're never going to hear it.
Okay, over to Fisk.
Steve?
Well, I'm embarrassed, but I've got 3 big reissues next year. Actually, 4. So right now I'm working on all kinds of shit. But next year they're putting out the Boss Hogg record again. This is the thing I did with them at Sear Sound. It's a very good, weird record. It's aged well. And I'm working on a regroove of Teens of Denial with Will Toledo from Car Seat Headrest, where we're going to remix the record and probably change some of the vocals. He's going to rewrite them from the 10-year perspective. So that's kind of fun. And then, of course, the immersive mix of Prison by Jesse Bernstein and Full Sentence by Pigeon Head, which are my own records or whatever. And they've been put together in immersion. And the Bernstein record's been rescored. So the samples were gone and there are a lot of real instruments. And I'm very proud of it. And I'm guessing 3rd quarter next year on Sub Pop. So yeah, I'm
Amazing.
a lucky motherfucker. It just lined up that way,
John, last ones from you.
Yeah, I never know what is actually going to make it out, but there's the cutest band name I've ever dealt with. This band called Telescope Club, and they're also the cutest band I think I ever worked with. They're a couple from Rhode Island. They're great. This shoegaze thing called New Age Healers is really cool, super cool. Every time the rough mixes come on in the car, I'm really happy about it. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Suzalo record that Rocky Vodolato formed a rock band and made this record, and the band is called Suzalo, and I don't know, he's been on KEXP quite a bit with it, but that is a fine rock and roll record. That people could listen to. Yeah, that's probably enough.
Well, look, on that note, I'm going to thank our 3 guests. It's been time just flies by when we're talking about this stuff. And I really appreciate you guys taking a few hours out of your Tuesday, November evening to touch base and give us your thoughts and let us know what you've been up to. And that for now concludes tonight's guest appearances here at the Audio Engineering Society with the Giants of the Pacific Northwest. Let's give our guests a hand.
How does that work?
Wow.
They're digital hands. We get digital hands.
Yeah,
I like it.
It's okay.
I want to hear more Jim Rondinelli stories.
Oh, man.
I want to know what that gold record is on the back of Jim Rondinelli's thing.
That looks like a can record.
That is Weezer Pinkerton, that one.
Oh, nice.
Wow. Okay.
That's the one that the bands love.
Yeah.
Nice.
Gotta love that part.
That was the good one.
Yeah, right.
Oh, wait a minute.
It was the one that was the commercial flop, and
right
now it has somebody told me over there now it actually has the best daily tally of all of them, which seems unthinkable, but we'll see.
Excellent.
Yeah. But that was like they seemed to fall off the map, but bands kept bringing that record into the studio, being like, "Oh no, dude, you got to check this out. This is the best one."
The secret is I hate to say it, but the secret was Sound City B. It's like Sound City B console.
What console was in Sound City B?
It was the old. It was another old like Neve with 1066s in it. It was like another early
Wow.
series console, 8028 or something like that.
Jim, you know I was in that that room when I was 19. I had a synthesizer and I got hired to keep it in tune and change it around for a band that was doing overdubs that day. So
that's awesome.
Well,
I'm
a long time ago.
I'm sure it hadn't been cleaned since the time you were in.
Right.
Everything was new in 1973.
It had the worst studio sofa and grime on the linoleum ever. But it's, God, that room sounded good. In fact, our old friend Tony Berg now has that room with Blake Shelton. They are the people occupying the Sound City building.
Yep, I went and visited. Stevie moved that API he had behind his house into there.
Yeah. The backyard API, which was a Frank DiMedio API. It was a leftover from Sunset or Sound Factory, one or the other.
Jeez.
Yeah, it had some rich history.
Yep.
That hurts. Think about that.
But they seemed to find another Neve that was very much like the Sound City board that Dave Grohl got. But what they had down there was something that looked really similar to it. So I don't know.
Yeah, probably just cost 10 times more.
10 times as much.
Like,
But
I love them consoles, but God, 20 now they're like 20 grand a channel now.
Yeah, that's just silly. But you might as well just build one. Like,
yeah,
find all the stuff. But, you know, I'm sure Jack feels the same way, but I feel like that all the time. Like, yeah, no, I'll build myself a Klon. Thank you very much. I'm not going to pay $5 grand for a Klon distortion pedal. That's ridiculous.
So cool. So open questions from the floor. You guys are welcome to hang if you'd like and answer open questions. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Oh,
It is a pleasure.
And handing it over to Jess.
thank you so much, Jim and Steve and John and Jack. This has been a treasured night, like very special. And we invite you to stick around. At this point, everyone's welcome to turn on their video. We do like to do introductions just of any participants who want to share a bit of what they're into, what their audio deal is. And, you know, we like to see who attends our meetings too. And, you know, you're welcome to drop in the chat as well. And then we'll just open it up for open discussion. So we can hang out as late as we want. At some point, if everybody's still talking, we'll just let it go and keep it rolling. So as we do in the Pacific Northwest. So I'll just kick it off just really briefly. Jess Berg. I've been a live sound engineer for over 22 years. Got into tour and production management. After COVID, got recruited into broadcast audio and public radio, and currently going back into freelance world. Been part of the Pacific Northwest section since 21 when I was living in Washington, and very grateful to be part of it still. And just, yeah, really happy everyone was able to make it tonight. So thanks for coming out. And I am going to just try to do this with the participant list. And I'm just going to call on folks and go down the line. So Adam Berman, if you want to unmute and say hi, tell us what your audio deal is and maybe where you're at.
Hi, everyone. So this is my first time attending one of these meetings. I come from broadcast and motion picture land. went to film school and studied sound a long time ago. Actually worked with some of the guests producing TV ads for Associated Grocers. We would mix the audio at the music stores, and a long time ago. But anyway, so I mostly work in film and motion picture production today, but I have a kid who's a very gifted classical pianist, and it sort of opened up a lot of doors, and I'm now doing a lot of on-location classical music recordings, and just wanted to get better at it, and you know, produce the videos and have some really beautiful soundtracks.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining. Glad you could make it.
Mm.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Andy Rosen.
I'm a television engineer, really, and I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yes, thank you.
And I am the Audio Engineering Society Forensics Working Group's Rapporteur Liaison to ISO JPEG Trust. I currently work for Sonic Origin, which is one of the audio watermarks that defends us against generative AI. I'll stick my email address in the chat. The content credentials movement spans SMPTE and other trade groups, and we're slowly convincing studios and advertisers to watermark everything so that you can prove it's yours and not generative AI fake. And it's a thing. It's about 3 years behind where it needs to be, but we're saving the world slowly.
The good stuff. Thanks, Andy. Glad you could make it. And thanks for dropping that in the chat too. Brian Willoughby.
Hi, I used to live in Seattle, but I moved down to Los Angeles last year. And I've got an electrical engineering degree from way back in the day. And I'm currently working with a company called Mobius Acoustics. I'm designing electronics and digital signal processor board for their powered speakers that are aimed for outdoor and actually eventually indoor and mastering studios as well. So.
Very cool. Thanks for joining. Glad you could make it. Janie Wallach.
My video is muted and I can't unmute it, apparently. So can I? Okay. Start my video. You cannot start your video because it is disabled by the host.
Oh,
there we go.
Video popped in. Yeah, I asked to start it.
There we
you
go. Yeah, my video popped in, but there we go. But I'm Janie Wallach. I record live music still, amazingly, which I've been doing for a while now. And I've recorded both Jack and Steve in some of their other bands. And though that's been a while, but anyway, and I'm also a committee member.
Thanks, Jeannie. Glad you could make it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Great meeting.
Ethan Camp.
Hi, I'm Ethan. I currently manage the recording studios at Evergreen, so it's been really a pleasure to hear from, well, all three of y'all tonight, but a lot of pride for Evergreen, and just want to let you all know that the studios are still going strong and music technology labs, and we have a great technician now who knows how to work on vintage Buchlas, so I'd say the Buchla 200 is better than it's ever been. And yeah,
Is Terry Setter still there?
Terry retired a few years ago.
Oh, a loss.
Yeah, no, the old guard of faculty from my perspective have all retired. I was a student about 10 years ago, so I interacted with Terry and, Peter Randlett and I went to Steve's house one time with Peter. I don't know if you remember that, Steve, but that was really, really fun. But yeah, thank you all so much. This has been great.
I tell all the high school kids about the Evergreen program. I don't know how many of them go down there, but I still recommend it to people.
Thank you. I think it's a special thing Evergreen has. I feel very lucky to have experienced it and also to try to keep, things running there.
Yeah, no, it was life-changing for me. I mean, that's where I mentioned this. I'm sorry, we're all introducing each other. I'll shut up.
No, it's free form now, Steve. You're good.
Well, the point is that I was a muso. I was a synthesizer guy. I was getting faster and faster. I hear recordings of myself back then, and I actually was competitive. I was in 1/5 of the talent of Jan Hammer or one of those people, or Joe Zawinul. I was just crazy. I was just monophonic synthesizers. You can do everything with that, right? And then I found out about independent music, and I realized what a rarefied, weird thing I was into, and that no one gave a shit about it. And there was all this other music, and that kind of became my life, oddly enough, because inside that universe, there's room for all kinds of things to happen. And certainly in 1979, no one saw what was going to happen in 1993 or whatever, but that's my war. I won. There's no more gatekeepers. Everyone can record. It's all punk rock. It's an evergreen thing. It's not a good world, but now everyone can record. It's better than how it was. It's better than how it was. People used to spend too much money to have somebody that hated their job record their vocals and mix their songs. That was not a good system. And it was that system through the 80s, kind of, I'm talking too much.
Steve is not wrong.
Okay. It's like I can't believe I'm talking to somebody that can relate to me. The last guy I recorded with insisted on this, hated this song, blah, blah, blah. It's like, wow, I imagine there's young engineers that do that, they walk out of the session because I didn't realize this was this kind of music. I don't do this, it's a service industry. I think everybody here understands that. I don't know why I'm talking about it. But yeah, it was terrible. 70s, 80s, just dickwads, we're running the recording studios. We're actually doing the day-to-day stuff. Not all of them. They were great guys. Tom Mallon, no one's talked about Tom Mallon. Tom Mallon sort of, I've said this in front of you, he's sort of the Jack Endino of the San Francisco art punk rock scene. He recorded everybody, he did 2 sessions a day, lived in his studio. Just an amazing guy. Pilmel got to work with him once. But I'm just talking now. And everyone hasn't introduced themselves. I'm sorry.
You're good. It's good stuff. Moving down the list, we've got Micah. Hey, Micah.
Hey, sorry, I heard my name there and I was like, what's going on there? I'm sitting on the couch here.
Just doing
There you go.
intros. Yeah.
Cool.
Hi.
Hey. Yeah, so
Hi.
I'm Micah, audio engineer and a composer, and yeah, I was just so excited today to see you guys. It's pretty cool. I had walked by, I used to teach a class, an audio class, and I would talk about, reciprocal recordings. It's always shocking to me how few, like there's no real, like it's still just a little studio that's being used. I'm in Ballard, I live here in Ballard too, which is cool. But it's just this tiny little building that just sits there really unobtrusively. Nobody really walks by. There's no like plaques or nobody like there's no tourists or bus tour. You know what I mean? It's just like still a cool. I love that. It's still just a cool little kind of studio here that recorded all these great projects. So thank you guys again for doing that. I appreciate that. I'm also I was gonna say I'm a committee and a vice chair member here. Sorry, did I say it?
The studio is still a functioning studio actually. It's a couple of young lads have taken it over and are running it pretty well, I hear. Steve, you might know who. Yeah,
they're teaching in the daytime. Yeah,
are they? Good for them.
Yeah. One of them was my intern, Mike Davis from the Sea Cats.
Yeah, Mike.
Very, very smart guy.
Yeah, I remember looking at the Wikipedia page, and it definitely changed ownership hands quite a bit. The guy, yeah, the guy from Death Cab for Cutie? Didn't he own it for a while? And then
For a long time.
Gibbard.
He recently sold it to these new guys, these youngsters. Chris Walla.
Yeah, that's right. Walla, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's awesome. Thank you guys. It's really cool to see you and everything.
Cool. Good to see you, Micah. Glad you could make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. See who's next. Rick Chinn.
These mouse things take so long. Let's see. I'm Rick Chinn. I've been doing this for a long, long time. Since the mid-60s, the British invasion. And I'm now a life member of the AES and former webmaster. And I was doing, I did live sound for a long, long time. And then the stuff got too heavy and I got too lazy. And I switched to doing recording, and I'm in the process now of handing my recording business off to another person because my right eye is all of a sudden kaput and I can't drive at night. And gigs happen at night. That's a problem. Anyway, I'll see y'all next month, I guess.
Yes, can't wait. And glad you could make it tonight too. It's good to see you. All right, next up, Bob Hewitt.
How you doing? Thanks, you guys. This was really great and enjoyable. I loved hearing all your stories and West Coast perspective. While you were doing that, I was cutting my teeth on rap and dance records in New York, and eventually advertising and all that kind of stuff. I'm in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, where I've been since COVID. I mix short films about classical music artists. Recently did a full-length documentary about an opera. It's really going great. But before that, I spent about 11 years at the Metropolitan Opera in New York, which was a pretty rarefied experience, and all kinds of great things happen there. So, and that's about all I'd share. I enjoyed, Steve, your talks about synthesizers in the old days. I was super inspired by all that, maybe a bunch of years younger or a few years younger. And by the time I got to New York, I was super excited about the synclavier, and I let that pave my way into this New York studio scene.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was lucky to be there. There was an LA synthesizer cult, and it was based around USC and Long Beach City College, which is where I started my work. They had a Moog studio, and at the top of it, there was Beaver and Krause, which were a synthesizer duo. And so they would sell their gear to USC, and USC would sell their gear to Long Beach City College. So it was this really weird small world. The John Carpenter stuff was all done by the guy that ran the USC studio. I mean, I think there were less than 50 people doing synthesizers at one point or something. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. I really enjoyed it. I'll be back again.
No, thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
Good to see you again. Glad you could make it. Let's see, Rod Evenson.
I'm here. I can't get my video on for you, but I can start talking. Okay, there we go. I've been doing recording work in the Portland, Oregon area and along the West Coast for quite a number of years. I'm a life member of the AES, the SMPTE, the IEEE, for what that's worth, and am a double E like several of the others of you. But my recording work, the public face of it, the big one is all classical radio in Portland, in terms of classical music recording, which I do quite a bit of in the Portland, Oregon area. But you can also find my work on Naxos, Parma, VAI. Those are the restorations. And what else? Delos. I know there have been some releases of my work on Delos. So that's pretty much rounding that out. So for whatever questions there might be, I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. Glad you could make it. Good to see you.
Okay.
Let's see. Tom Hall.
There I am. Gosh, I feel like the odd guy out. Everybody here's a studio engineer kind of person. I'm an aerospace engineer, but that doesn't count. I own a company called Cello Technologies that at one point owned 2 recording studios, but that was before my time. And we do high-end audio video systems, 2-channel and surround sound. And so I'm always trying to learn better what happens on the front end of all this. I have a few friends in the recording industry, so I find it fascinating to sort of get the behind the music thing as so much of this feels. And just so much of the technology that I have to deal with customers going, well, it has to be this wire and blah, blah, blah. And I point out that they've never actually seen a recording studio because they would be horrified. But yeah, it just amazes me. It's such a human thing. And we've had a couple of customers, Paul Allen, a couple others that had their own studios and sort of tried to know and work with that end. But I just find it fascinating how the sausage is made on the inboard end, and all the talk of Neves. Just as a weird aside, years and years ago, 26 years ago, before I bought Cello, I was helping them out, and one of the houses was Kenny G's house here on Hunts Point, and walked into his studio, which was a glass box, cube actually, which I thought was disturbing just to stand in and make noise. But in the console room was a Neve board, and that's where the person I was with sort of educated me on, oh, this is the coolest thing in the world. The next time I went to that house, probably 4 or 5 years after, when Craig McCaw had bought it, that was his kid's playroom, and the Neve was still there. And I'm looking at knobs pulled off, and I by then I knew a lot more and was just very disturbed by anything other than the fact that it was a kid's room with a soundproof door, which made a lot of sense. So anyway, I also own a company called Speaker Lab, local speaker company that shrunk and grew various things over the years and is still kind of struggling along. So that's my background.
I have a set of Speaker Lab 3s in my living room right now.
Great.
And I was just looking at them and going, these are 50 years old, and I built them myself in the 70s. I probably need to recap these crossovers.
Yeah, you'll probably find little puddles in there. And probably the components have fallen off the old hot glue. Get that a lot. The guys like, I tilted my speaker and something's rattling.
It lasted that long for that stuff to go out. No, Speaker Lab is badass. It's great to meet you.
Indeed.
And Rick, do you have a comment on Speaker Lab?
No, I have a question for Tom.
Yes, sir.
Are you the same Tom Hall that worked at Bear Creek and at Triad for a while?
I am not.
Ah.
My handle on Zoom used to be Tom Hall, not that one.
Okay.
Although, because of Facebook and things, he and I have crossed paths and still have not met in person. But I have a client who wants to do a studio project, and I contacted him saying, hey, I think it would be fun if you could help this client with building out a studio, just because I would love to confuse that client with 2 people with the same name.
He's capable and good at it.
Oh, good to know.
Well, great to meet you, Tom. I'm glad you were able to make it, and you're more than welcome anytime. And love to hear more about what you're into.
Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Speaker Lab was legendary.
Yeah, we're hoping someday to be again, but
yeah, no, I'm glad the company is still around.
yeah, I got involved in around 2006 and told them, hey, you guys should still be making speakers. Owning a company where we do very high-end audio stuff, having kit speakers actually would be, you know, it was enlightened self-interest that I could get disassembled speakers that when a client wanted something very custom, we would just miraculously be able to build it. And it was actually at an AES meeting that I met a couple of the guys that got me more involved in it that were former employees of Speaker Lab, and they're like, oh, hey, we should sit down. And here I am many years later.
There's a great music source story I'll go by real quick. Jim Wolf, the guy that owned the music source, had a partner in another studio and it didn't work out, and the guy split and owed him money, and it was a bad situation, and it was technically over with, and a restaurant moved in, and somebody was making a delivery in the back room, and they looked up and saw these giant tannoy monitors in the wall, and then there was a rack in the corner that had a bunch of hardware in it, and they sort of somehow word of mouth got to Jim, and Jim gave him like $300 for it. So those became the main large monitors at the music source, and I forget what else was in there, but yeah. Anyway, the Kenny G thing kind of reminded me of that. It's like, oh, that's from before. Anyway.
Tom, there was a follow-up. Brian was asking, Speaker Lab in the chat. Brian, do you just want to ask?
Sure.
I'm
yeah.
reading the chat. Yeah.
I had catalogs for the Speaker Lab when I lived in North Carolina in the 80s. And then I moved out to Seattle and found their store on Roosevelt, and eventually became a customer and bought a AV system, a home surround sound and video system from them. But they told me at the time, at least at the retail store, that the original Speaker Lab had sold the name, and they didn't actually have speaker kits at that location anymore. So I'm wondering, what is the current Speaker Lab? What is the lineage?
So Speaker Lab, before my involvement, had gone through basically 3 ownerships. There was a bankruptcy. For about 30 seconds, there was a company called Computer Lab, and they had made a deal with Eagle Computers to be the West Coast distributor of this computer company, who sort of 2/3 of the way through the deal, when Speaker Lab had bought a bunch of stuff already from them, said, oh, no, we're going to just be doing direct sales, and we've got some sales in other places. So that took them down once. Then there was some infighting amongst the owners that again resulted in a sort of a change of ownership. And then in the early 90s, basically, they stopped making speakers. Sort of when everything offshored to China, they didn't. I look at all these these weird junctions where, like with the catalog, which they got they were doing a catalog starting. I have on our website, we have almost all the catalogs. They had a catalog in 71, and some of their early 70s catalogs, they started selling other equipment, and audio used to be very regional, like you had your territory you could sell in and all that. And so they had gotten a lot of grief for it and fought through that. Anyway, and so the catalog business, I look at Crutchfield these days, I'm like, that should be you. Like when I first met with the owner at the time, I said, you've missed a lot of these opportunities. And she was a woman. She had started working there in 78, graduated from Seattle University, went to work for REI for a short time, went to Speaker Lab. The test to get a job there was they handed you a kit, sent you out in the parking lot, and told you come back when it's done. She completed the kit. She worked in their catalog, distribution, and many positions in the company. And after the second bankruptcy, sort of ended up being the one that could put together the money to keep the company going. They had at one point had 8 retail stores or 10 retail stores across the Pacific Northwest. But yeah, so in the 90s, it got to the point that they just couldn't compete. You know, Klipsch, Boston Acoustic, all these guys suddenly went overseas and their speakers dropped 20% in cost. And so they just stopped. David Gravener, who had founded it, went on to do Bollinger Gravener, doing ribbon speakers, and then Wisdom Audio before his death about 5 or 6 years ago. Anyway, so Ann had owned it the last time. The thing with the name is that they couldn't, because of the bankruptcy, the company was actually, shit. I should know my history. I got involved after this, but it's like Future Audio Sales or something, because the name was attached to the bankruptcy for a short period of time. They ended up getting it back. So that issue went away. I still have a bit of a challenge with it because there is a former employee that had left there a long time ago. I had hired to do engineering for us. He does a bunch of rebuild. He was a sales guy, but figured out how to glue cones together and rebuild speakers. I hired him to do some work when we were bringing out the new 7. And then basically he tried to sort of end run and do his own thing. And it was made clear to him that he had worked for us. Here's a picture of him standing in front of our sign, being paid to go somewhere to do an event, and that the name wasn't his. So anyway, and we've continued to, I got involved in 2006. We came out with the first new kit speaker, the Point 1, in 2008, came out with the new 7 in 2012, 13. Have had all kinds of sourcing issues for product, which has been a challenge, especially through COVID, when the people who manufactured the stuff literally are like, oh, they made the cones. Oh, that factory doesn't exist anymore. Anyway, so don't want to take a bunch of time, but yeah, it's been a challenging thing, and we're just now have another company that's going to be able to make the larger woofers for us. So hopefully we'll be able to stock stuff again, because right now all we have is the electronics kits of our smaller speakers available. So yeah, and the store on Roosevelt, 63rd and Roosevelt, we're actually still there. The owners of the building are selling it, that block. Definitive Audio was on that block. We were on that block. It's going to be an 8-story condo like everything else around there. So the people who own the building are selling it. But we still warehouse in there and assemble speakers there. But we got, the retail we closed down in 2015 when the woman who was running that racked up enough of a debt with the landlord and myself that neither of us were willing to help her past that, and we just shut the retail side of it down. So that's the long and short history. Somebody asked what the URL is. It's speakerlab.net. This goes back to the name challenge, and in the kerfuffle with the person running the retail thing, she was trying to sell anything she could to pay her debts, and just had let the website lapse. And a guy who has a company called The Speaker Lab, he trains people to talk like this on Zoom meetings, snagged it and doesn't want to give it up. So we changed it to .net, moved the website over, and that's where we are now.
Oof. Thank you for sharing all of that. That's quite the journey. And Rick, you have your hand up. Go for it.
Yeah, let me add a little bit of history to before Tom's involvement. Back in the mid 70s, I think is when Pat Snyder started the company, and he had a Klipschorn clone that he was selling, as well as the 7, which was a 3-way system that used some EV components. I worked at Tapco at the time, And we had Speaker Lab speakers that we used on the workbenches because they were hard to blow up and they sounded good. So Pat also had a Bose 901 clone, and I think Dr. Bose may have taken him to task over that, being litigious as he was, and they were on 35th and 55th up there, and the building's still there, but I'm sure it's not audio anymore. Anyway, and then I kind of lost track of them after that, but that's my addition.
Yeah, that building, I think it's an insurance company now. Somebody sent me a shipping label from there earlier this year and said, oh, I had some Speaker Lab stuff. I even have the label that was on the box, and they sent me a scan of it, which was very cool. It's had 4 locations, 3 of which were on Roosevelt, and that was the 4th. So that it was started in 71. It was Pat Snyder, David Graebner, and Jim Klein or Croft. One of them was one of the founders of Definitive, one of Speaker Lab. And they were all still around and had a meeting. We had a reunion soon after I got involved in late 2007, and got to sit down with the founders and say, hey, we want to do speakers again. What should we do? And that's sort of what helped lay out what our path was of doing additional ones. The K, which was the Klipsch knockoff, Speaker Lab only produced as a speaker for a short period of time because Klipsch sued their butts off. And so then they could make it as a kit, and Klipsch couldn't go after them for some reason. I'm sure today they would. And so now weekly I get a request for the plans for building the Ks. And they had EV, horn tweeter, horn mid, and a 15-inch woofer and a folded horn cabinet. So it's on the boards for us to design a new one, using ribbon drivers for the mids and tweets instead, which is what we've done also with the 7s, because we have enough efficiency and watts are cheap and all that, and we get more dynamics. So one of these days we'll have the time to finish putting that project together.
They Speaker Lab at one time did a really cool ad, which was a takeoff on a John Belushi Saturday Night Live thing with the Samurai stereo salesman, and they had a guy in a samurai outfit and a gigantic sword, and he attacked a Sansui receiver.
Yeah, I've been trying to collect some of the old, mostly, I mean, the print ones. There were also video ads that they did, but trying to get copies of all the old print stuff, because there was Woofer the dog with its head like a burned matchstick in front of a speaker, which was their play on the Maxell ad, which we've then revised that, and we do T-shirts with that on it now. So yeah, it was an amazing history, and I grew up buying stereo equipment. From my first speakers I bought from them in like 1980, 1981, when I was in middle school, which ages me. But a lot of people are like, oh, were you one of the founders? I'm like, I was 4 or 3. So no, wasn't me. Anyway,
Awesome.
I'll shut up now. Sorry.
No worries. No, thank you. I'm glad. Thank you for sharing again. That was a really interesting history to learn too. We have a couple more intros we'll get through here. Next, Tom Stiles.
Hello. So in 1979, I was an electrical engineering student at the UW, except I spent most of my time in the music building because I was playing with the toys there, what limited toys we had. I had a student job recording music students, doing the same kind of classical music recording I still do with 2 nice Neumann microphones. and a 2-track recorder, except I was getting $2.32 an hour to do it. And I heard that there was some kind of a cool multi-track studio at Evergreen, and that our Buchla synthesizer had wandered down there, so I wanted to go check it out. So I hitchhiked one day in the summer. I hitchhiked down to Evergreen just to see what was going on, down to Olympia. Managed to make my way out to Evergreen, and wandered into the communications building. And two friendly recording program students, Peter Randlett and Steve Fisk, talked to me a little bit about the program and gave me a tour of the studio and showed me around a bit. And then I realized it was getting late and I didn't actually have any place to stay. And it was dark, so Steve Fisk kindly took me back to his apartment, fed me some pasta, and let me sleep under his Oberheim for the night on the floor. And I went back up to the UW and proceeded on my way. Remarkably, Steve and I have known each other all this time, at least peripherally, and never worked together professionally. But it's always great to hear about what he's doing, and great tonight to hear a kind of a recap of it. And yeah, I went on to do recordings at the UW and elsewhere, and now at Jack Straw Cultural Center, where I do recordings and teach workshops, and I also do live sound at Seattle Center and other places. And this was a great meeting. Great to hear about the history of Northwest recording.
Great to see you.
Great to meet you again.
Oh, also to Ethan Camp, the next Peter Randlett or Steve Fisk might be in your class now.
Yeah, the students are still amazing.
And Tom, where are you now?
I am high atop the studios of Jack Straw Cultural Center, because we had some construction going on, had to move a bunch of stuff upstairs while the construction went on. So I have been up here soldering XLR connectors and listening to the giants of recording.
Awesome.
In the fabulous University District.
Well, good to see you, Tom. I'm glad you could make it tonight. Tyrell.
Hello. I'm Ty Sabin. Yep. I'm currently in Stanwood, Washington, but I'm a first-year student at Shoreline Community College in the audio engineering and production program down there. I've just been trying to go to like all the venues and stuff lately in the area. Went up to Tacoma. They have like a DIY venue called Real Art up there that I went to, which was really cool. Saw some couple of Seattle bands. I'm really into like the punk and hardcore scene, so it was really cool to hear everyone talk about that kind of stuff. And obviously Nirvana and the bands, kind of the predecessors to those bands, I really enjoy them, so it was really cool to hear everyone speak. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing.
Awesome. Glad you could make it. And
Yeah, glad to be here.
congrats. Yeah, good. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Stephen, I know you had mentioned in the chat earlier you might not speak, but you did drop in what you're up to, and it's a really comprehensive list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, there were more certificates, but I didn't list them. Yeah, I've taken all this stuff in audio for many years. I got a degree in '92 and certificates from the recording workshop in '95 and the UW sound production certificate in '97 and MIDI music production degree in '96. And I really haven't done anything in the area of audio except for film. So In 2014, I worked for a couple of years as a boom operator, production sound mixer. In the last 2 years, I've been a stagehand, which I didn't do before. I didn't do live sound type stuff, and that's been kind of interesting and fun and a lot of hard work. And that's what actually pays the bills now. I'm actually doing that, and I also do some conversions / operations work at Climate Pledge Arena and some production assistant work for filmmaking, because I've been a filmmaker since 2014. I was executive producer on an award-winning music video. That was pretty cool. I've worked on dozens and dozens of local films. Nothing big, nothing anybody probably would even know, but a lot of feature films and some documentaries and music videos and stuff like that. It's been kind of fun. But if somebody is hiring, that'd be great. I'd love to work in the audio industry one of these days.
Well, thank you. I'm glad you could make it. And yeah, thank you for being here and sharing good comments too in the chat. And let's see, we've also got, I don't want to forget my co-host for the evening, Gary Louie.
Hi, I guess the video doesn't switch over here. I'm still watching Jess, but I'm the secretary of the Pacific Northwest section and a life member of the AES. And I'm one of those, I'm not an evergreen student, never was. I was a UW EE grad and went to work at the UW School of Music, where I'd sometimes tag team projects with Tom Stiles there back in the 70s. So I stayed there a long time and actually retired from there a couple of years ago. And, you know, it seems like it's almost a full-time job just to fix my own stuff. So, and for Ethan, Ethan, I didn't see you at the AES convention last month. And so we missed you at the Ampex dinner, which turned into a combined Ampex plus Pacific Northwest section dinner. So it's like
I'm
this.
so sorry to have missed it.
So
oh my gosh,
you missed it. Too bad. And
yeah, I couldn't get away.
Maybe
from
next
Evergreen.
time. Okay, that's all I've got.
Awesome. Gary, thank you so much for all your help with this stuff. And Dan also could not have done this without you. Let's cap off our intros. Take it away.
Thanks, Jess. I just wrote that my internet connection's been freezing, so I don't know if I'll be able to get through this intelligibly, regardless of whether the connection was freezing or not, I guess. Anyway, good. Okay. Anyway, I am the technologist and a committee member for the Pacific Northwest section. And I've had a little sound company here for a long time using Meyer speakers. And I'm also the head of the oral history project for the AES. And as such, I've been doing interviews of notable audio people for the last 4 years. And I've done the equivalent of 75 2-hour interviews, including today with John and Helen Meyer, the Meyers of Meyer Sound, which was really interesting. I only got 40 minutes with them because they are extraordinarily busy people. But it's really fun to talk to John Meyer because he goes from topic to topic to topic without taking a breath, and they are all fascinating things that he is into. So it's been a blast talking to these really cool people. And I am very happy to have been part of this meeting tonight and seeing Jack again and Jim and Steve. I think we've met, and meeting John for the first time. And it's fun for those who are not part of the committee that we can come and talk to folks beforehand casually about.
When
be so inclined to do so. So thank you to Jess for being such a great chair and for putting this meeting happening.
I used to have a day job at McEwen Audio Visual in San Francisco, and we built Myers. Little ones,
Yeah.
big ones. And yeah, there were lawsuits back then. People were ripping them off and, you know, all of that. But yeah, that's, you know, that's what they did. I mean, you know, they've been a sound company back to the Cow Palace. You know, they've just been there forever. But yeah, they all
What year was that roughly?
81, 2, 3.
Okay, that was when John and Helen were starting the company. They started
they
it in
had
'79.
the big wedges that would go in the stacks, that would go in the arrays. And so
well,
yeah,
MSL3s were that trapezoidal box, and John actually patented the trapezoidal box. So if he had enforced it, nobody could build a trapezoidal box without paying him a royalty. But he told me years ago that he just felt that wasn't worthy project, so anybody can build a trapezoidal box now. But he was the first one to invent it, which is just blows my mind.
Well, and McEwen did lots of installations, so they put, you know, Myers systems in everywhere. I built a small system for a giant sort of cafe in the business district that was like, this thing was, you know, from the 1800s, so you couldn't put a molly bolt into the wall, just all this crazy stuff. But yeah, I actually assembled the whole damn thing myself, the amp, the speakers, and it was all Meyer designs. It was a trip.
And he worked for McEwen and designed the JM3 and JM6, I think, was the thing for them.
Irish Mafia. The original Harry McEwen, I think, might have invented the PA system. That was one of the things they talked about. He had all these inventions. The answering machine, he had made an answering machine that was solenoid that would pick up the phone and turn on a tape deck and then hang the phone back up. He invented that in the 30s or the 40s or something like that.
McEwen did the sound for the Jimi Hendrix concert at Sick Stadium, which was his last Seattle appearance. And Rick Chinn was there with bandstand music on stage. And I watched Rick there do his thing, get the back line put together.
One of my jobs there was running the test bench. So like NYPD Blue or something, there's all these guys that need to have this equipment QC'd so they can take it to a hotel or whatever. And every once in a while, this weird little Tolex thing would come out that looked really old. And, you know, the PA guy would walk, oh yeah, that's the Altamont board. And I would go like, what? And then, you know, the VP, Mort, he was running the board at Altamont.
Wow.
Like, this is cursed. Get this out of circulation. We don't want to send the Altamont board out to the Fairmont, you know, or wherever it was going. But
I never heard that McEwen did that sound. So that's really fascinating. Did you know?
Go ahead.
Did you know Lee Brankman in San Francisco?
That's a familiar name, but I couldn't say that. I was going to mention Ifkin Kadar, Steve Kadar. He was the head tech guy. Yeah, he taught me everything. I was kind of a clumsy soldering monkey before Steve got a hold of me, and he was a great boss. It was a good place to work. You know, I'm saying all these silly things, but no, there's so few things I could have done for a living, and that one was all in my wheelhouse. So, me, a bunch of musicians worked there. Mark from Negative Land, Mark Hostler worked there. It was a cool thing. There isn't anything like that anymore, you know.
The San Francisco AES section had a meeting this year. I sometimes go to their meetings also, and they had a meeting at the current Meyer facility in Berkeley, which is kind of cool because they have outside the theater presentation auditorium room there where the meeting was, they have a bunch of history in the lobby of speakers and pictures of people and stuff. It's really interesting to look over the history of the company.
Yeah.
Steve Fisk, do you know the name of the Swanson of Swanson Sound, who was McCune's arch rival over in East Bay?
No. I applied for work at some place over there by the airport, but I don't think it was Swanson. What year would that have been?
Well, way back in the beginnings, so 60s and 70s, maybe even 50s.
Yeah, no, I grew up in LA. I wouldn't have had much to do with that. The way it was described to me is that Kadar and Mort, the VP guy that ran sound at Altamont, is they would throw everything in the truck and go run sound for the Doobie Brothers, because that's where they could make money. The Doobie Brothers hadn't really broken yet, but they had gigantic local audiences, so they would just set up PAs for Doobie Brothers shows. And slowly that turned into McEwen AV. I may have that all wrong. And the mafia thing's real, by the way. Fucking Irish cops, okay? You know, you couldn't get towed. You know, you could leave the trucks anywhere in San Francisco and there'd be a, Harry, one of your boys left a truck in front of the hotel, you know, and it was cute. It was fun, you know, but weird.
I was in San Francisco on and off in 1968 because I was in the Air Force at the time and allowed to work a civilian job, which ended up at Don Weir's Music City over on Columbus near the Tower Records.
Yeah.
And McCune was a big deal then.
Okay. Well, then I don't know what I'm talking about. Their big thing when I was working for them is that they had the live sound gig for Crystal Gale. So they were traveling all over the world doing Crystal Gale's sound. So.
Well, I've got brown eyes, but I ain't Crystal Gale.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Yeah. No. I mean, it was a little intimidating, all the Crystal Gale stuff going on over there. I was on the other side of the street. Anyway, here nor there, unless you want to start talking about the Bohemian Club or Est, because Harry Jr. was involved in both of them, and they ran sound for all the Est presentations. It was really strange. I actually ended up with a broken up Est movie that a friend of mine snagged for me. I'm kind of famous for sampling back a long time ago. I gave it to Negative Land. They restored it, put it all back together. But yeah, trying to set up a PA when you're one wall away from an Est presentation is turn around, meet your neighbor. Everybody love your neighbor, you know, and then they play some John Denver music and they scream and yell. And you pay the rent.
Oh,
I gotta roll, you guys. So it's been a pleasure.
Oh, pleasure's ours. Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Great that you could make it. Glad to see you.
Really lovely to see everybody and hear everybody talk about this stuff. Notice the Speaker Lab ad that Tom posted in the chat.
Yeah,
it's pretty great. It's awesome. So, all right, everybody. Thanks a lot. I'll see you.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you,
I'm
Jack.
out at this point too, so have a good day all.
All right.
Thank you.
See you, Rod.
Okay.
Thank you, Rod.
I've actually got to go too, so thanks everybody.
Oh,
All
see you,
right.
Dan.
See ya.
Good night, Dan.
Night, Dan.
Night.
See you Saturday, Dan.
Yep.
All right. And then there were.
Here's a Steve Fisk question, because I invoked the name of Peter Randlett. I knew Peter went from being a student at Evergreen to being on the faculty there for years. So what is he doing these days? Or have you kept up
about
with him?
every 3 weeks. I live in Tacoma, so I'm pretty close to Olympia. And he is working a lot on his property. He's retired, but he's still, you know, very, very busy with audio. And last time we spoke, he was restoring half track for Calvin Johnson because they wanted to release some Go Team tapes from the old days. Anybody know what the Go Team is? Yeah, Go Team was a home studio thing in the 90s, and I think it was Calvin Johnson and Toby Vale's main thing. Toby was the drummer for Bikini Kill. Galvin was the leader of Beat Happening of the Dub Narcotic Sound System. And the reason people have K's tattooed on their hands. And yes, Kurt Cobain is on 2 of the tracks. So they're going to put all of this back together, and the thing will come flying off the shelves because Kurt played guitar. You know? So anyway.
Cool.
So that's what Peter's doing. He's putting a tape deck together. He still plays a lot of music. And he helped me design this place. This is just a dumb little bedroom, but I've got polysorb, the stuff they build in Ballard. You know, so I've got soffits out of that. Or not soffits, excuse me, bass traps out of that over here, up here, over here. And the big thing was closing up the closet. Once we closed up the closet, the room sounded normal. And while I'm here, I'm stripping down the racks. I'm getting a lot of the shit out of the way. And there's a Mellotron and an Osmos because I'm an amateur keyboard player. So, yeah, that's how I rule the world. Oh, I'm upside down. Hang on. Very unprofessional. But I thought as long as you're seeing the dumpster room, you should see it's very small. There's hardly anything in there. It's a bunch of paperwork.
How are you finding the Osmos, Steve? Is it a revolutionary concept in synthesis?
It's a lot of listening. The Osmos, once you put hands on it, it's like, oh, fuck. Just holding down 5 or 6 notes is amazing because you can just have all this independent control. And the guys that programmed it, the people that programmed it, you know, knew what they were doing. For those that don't know about the Osmos, it's a Hans Zimmer kind of keyboard where you can wiggle things around, and each key is about as complicated as your standard MIDI instrument. So it's got pitch, yaw, and roll. For somebody mentioned the aerospace thing earlier. So it's quite an amazing thing. And the big trip is Peter Randlett insists that there is a way to make it work with Pro Tools. Right now, currently, people are saying, no, it's way too complicated for Pro Tools. So Peter's going to try to hook it up. But my point is that I'm not doing anything with MIDI. I'm actually having to play. So it's a personal challenge to myself. Sorry for the complicated answer. Turn into a gear debriefing. Forgive me.
Didn't Keith Emerson have an analog pitch, yaw, and roll?
Yeah, because he had the KX11, right? Yeah, no, that original Yamaha thing that the DX7 came out of. Yeah, that had all the aftertouch, all that crazy stuff. And the CS80, which is a Yamaha thing, that was the thing before the KX whatchamadingit. Yeah. And that's what Hans Zimmer did, Blade Runner and a bunch of his famous soundtracks and all that. So blah. But yeah, that's that whole thing about being able to hold a chord and then have individual controls of the fingers, you know, being able to modulate the things. It takes you out of the keyboard world and you can start doing something more expressive or whatever. So, Osmos is cool. It's a game changer. When the DX7 happened, that everybody went and got a DX7 and then turned into a preset machine with a very powerful preset machine. Osmos is probably the same thing. You know, there's probably going to be tons of people with presets, so you'll recognize Osmos sounds from records or movies or something like that.
Ethan.
And it's cheap. It's like $2,000. It's nothing. I mean, I put it on payments, but you know, considering how insane it is, you know, that's a trip. You know.
Ethan, what were you typing in the chat there about MPE?
Well, that's what the Osmos is. It's a MIDI polyphonic expression controller.
Right.
And yeah, we have 2 at Evergreen. They're fun. They're in the music technology labs.
Didn't know that.
We're finding that they're really fun if you use them. Like the onboard sound engine has some cool stuff, but like the faculty who teaches in there really likes to design instruments or like do stuff in Ableton Live with MPE. So
yeah, and unfortunately, because of who I am and how my career worked, having a pretend tape deck and a pretend mixer became my main job. And because I'm in the Northwest, interfacing with the rest of the planet was the thing. So Pro Tools was the interface. And yeah, Ableton looks fun, but you know, I got exposed to it and said, I don't got room for this. You know, John
That's
has worked on
understandable.
all kinds of platforms. John flips around a bunch. John knows a lot of shit. You know, I don't know anything, you know. I mean, some people get mad enough at Pro Tools that they have to stop using it. I understand that. You know.
There was a period I did get mad enough, but they got me back.
Well, and it's so weird now because you could be doing everything in Studio One or something. It's just a matter of what your plug-in thing and, you know, hoping that somebody knows how to send out waves, you know. But that whole reason of sticking to one company is gone now, as far as I can tell, you know.
Yeah, everybody's pretty used to just sending WAV files around now.
I do get Pro Tools sessions once in a while, and they always work, which was never the case in the old days, right? You know, so fuck, I don't know. And yeah, tape. I used to run tape because it made my job easier. You know, the drums sounded okay. The cymbals didn't need a lot of work when you used tape. Fuzzy guitars were friendlier coming off tape, but I eventually learned how to do that digitally and quit using tape. And somebody would have to pay me double right now if they wanted me to use tape. Just to chime in on that one, and I'm a tape guy. I love what tape does. I love the smell, and the thing that nobody talked about when that question was on the board, and I'm sure people have talked about it at the AES before, is that the tape dictates how you work. It's a workflow thing. And boy, musicians really are on it, you know, when they're involved that way, when there's only 24 tracks and you have to fight for the track space. And by the time you mix a record, everybody knows what's on every single channel, every moment in the song, and they're sitting there wanting to make sure the mix is right. So you're mixing with 5 people in the room or 3 people in the room or something. So
yeah, I worked with a guy who plays Irish music. I've done several albums with, and who's referred me for touring stuff. He was sure that he wanted to do an album on analog tape, and he had a recorder a Revox recorder he'd been playing with at home. But yeah, the workflow thing changes, and I was able to convince him that we really wanted to just record in Pro Tools and then bounce stuff off analog tape at the end.
For live music, it's perfect, and especially for a large ensemble, and you know, with 64 channels going, you can get everything. Yeah. Oddly enough, it's more musical, you know, in spite of the audio limitations, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, but the tape thing, you know, whatever, you know, it's probably not worth anyone's time. But yeah. John, you don't own a tape machine anymore, do you?
I do not. And the last place I've got a little Nagra. And those guys that are making tape now were out at Bob's and gave me a couple reels of the RTM tape, but I haven't tried it. But I don't, you know, you won't know that it's bad until it disintegrates on you, so that's kind of a bummer.
I saw Stuart Hallerman the other night, and he was talking about the old Soundgarden stuff all got mixed to an Nagra.
Wow.
You can hear this little click at the front because the thing makes a signature noise when the bias, you know, kicks in.
It engages.
Yeah.
I think I know what machine that was because they had a stereo Nagra in Olympia at Column Meek's studio.
It was Columns, yes.
Because his mom was like a concert pianist and she had bought it, but the input impedance was really weird, so it loaded down the console, like it dropped like 6-8 dBs whenever you plugged the 2-track in to record off of it.
And oddly enough, Column's mom had a traditional Irish label.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, Colum Meek is from Ireland, if you couldn't tell by the name. Another old Olympia engineer. Excuse me. Yeah.
Oh, Brian had a question there in the chat. Did you want to ask it, Brian?
Sure.
Yeah.
Steve, or actually John as well. Have you tried using tape saturation plugins to tame cymbals or guitars, or has that been effective or not?
It's all case dependent, and it never solves anything. It just creates another problem. Things can dull out a little bit. I've been playing with the SA3. It's originally a speech de-esser thing, but it's actually pretty musical, and it can turn terrible digital into something listenable. John, you've got opinions about all that crap.
Yeah, but I get nervous about it because it's kind of like a mystery, make everything supposed to sound better kind of thing, and then
You're talking specifically about the SA3.
No, actually more of the tape emulation stuff.
Okay.
Where you 2-3 records later, you're like, I start to recognize this and it's a problem, and I'd rather just mix it right in the first place. But I have been using the Dumb Waves Nonlinear Summer.
Which is, I'm the one who said you should try that.
Yeah, and these sort of badly recorded tracks are benefiting from it. So sometimes when you're throwing a Hail Mary, those kinds of plugins are good. But yeah, I mean, I kind of just think you should just make it sound good.
By any means necessary. It doesn't matter. Technology is not going to do it for you. There is a thing about analog technology that things rocked properly when they're blowing up a little bit. So I'm not talking about Sting records, but a lot of great SSL mixes and all that. It's the point where there's just a little bit of overmodulation. So that kind of diaspora that a console or a two bus would put on things is definitely part of like what you're trying to do when you throw up a tape thing. Is like you're trying to figure out somehow the transients have to stop being digital transients and turn into saturation or fake saturation or something like that. So I think that's still a big part of the music industry. I think people hear things that way. Even the shittiest, most mainstream stuff, they're still playing with overdrive and all of that. So
yeah, it is kind of like a fuzz box. But the mastering guy I worked with was like, these are all just fuzz boxes. The front end of these different converters blow up a little bit different.
Yeah, the Labries, all that.
Yeah. But yeah, there's ways to cheat it, but I find that it bites you in the butt a couple projects later when you realize, oh, everything I did this year has this same problematic fuzziness that I'm now tired of. So,
and I'm starting a second set of mixes for the Robot Band. I'm working on the second record, and I'm really thinking about using the saturation plugins for that, just because it's a lot of improv, and it happens over like an 11-minute period, a 19-minute period, and so I don't know. It just seems like some of that's just gonna shut off the musicality or something. I'm not sure. It's not a rock record, it's an improv record. A lot of different people soloing and trading off and all of that. So I guess I'm trying to make it more hi-fi. And then the NLS system is a trip. There's 3 consoles, and they've emulated 30 channels of each of these hit-making consoles. One is the Dark Side of the Moon console. One is this Israeli producer with all these EDM hits. And I forget what the SSL guy did, but it's an emulation of 3 consoles. It's a dead end. Waves isn't going to make anymore. And I feel kind of like grandpa. I'm still using the thing, even though it's 7 years old or something like that.
I mean, if it works, right? If it,
Yeah, it's a tool. Exactly. That's why I bothered to mention it. I mean, I told Jack John it was a good idea. Now John's fucking with it because we all hate digital, because we remember analog and memory is not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, least reliable. Your ear memory is the least reliable.
Completely.
I had a client thank me for saving his mix, and he didn't want to ask me right away, but he said, sometime you'll have to tell me what outboard analog gear you used. And I didn't have the heart to tell him I did it in Logic.
Right.
I was familiar with their EQ and their compressor and their limiter, and I used the tools that I knew, and I used my ears and some headphones, which you're not supposed to use for mixing, but he had a very subtle problem, and there you go, it fixed it.
And John and I mix on headphones a lot of the time.
But that's like a huge, like the tools, is such a big part. Like I make the effort to try out stuff, but the console and tape emulations in particular are doing like 3 things at once, so it's hard to have a control experiment, a neutral control sort of environment to just try one part of it at a time or something. So yeah, knowing what your tools are. But I mean, that was the same thing you used to always know on a Neve console. The mix sounded good when, you were hitting it hard enough that you had to turn the master fader down between -5 and -10 or whatever.
For me, it's a physical thing. Like if I'm working on a mix, my intellectual brain is analyzing everything I've done and remembering how I set things up and the things I just did. And then there's a point, and you can watch this in your clients too. There's a point when you start physically responding to it. There's a place where your foot starts to tap, and that means your brain isn't analyzing and you're experiencing music, if I can be that stupid to say that. But I've been doing this a long time, and I notice it in myself, and I notice it in the clients, and then I fuck with them, say, hey, 35 seconds into it, you were tapping your foot. Shut up. It's a good mix, So anyway, I think that's a real life thing when you quit thinking about it and it just starts being the musical experience,
That's when you got to record. Yep.
Right. Exactly.
Have you found any left brain, right brain aspects to this? I took a course with Steve Roach, who said, get rid of all the computer screens and mouses in your studio. Just have everything hooked up to a fader or a knob where you can physically touch it. And the way he described it, I guess, I forget which is left brain and which is right brain, but I guess.
So do I.
Left-handed people are creative, so it's the right brain that's creative. Yeah, if you're just dealing with physical things, you're in your right brain. But when you have to hunt for your mouse pointer and look at a screen and interpret graphics, then you get into left brain and it's more analytical and you might lose the flow.
Absolutely true. But, you have to find your workarounds, I guess. I struggle with that exact thing all the time, and I try to tell people I'm working with you have to hear it as if it's the first time that you're hearing it and not have your analytical part working. And so you do kind of weird Zen tricks to be able to hear something over and over again, but still hear it like it's the first time that you heard it, which is kind of related. But yeah, it's like, probably young people who've come up in it are fine with automating stuff graphically, but I still have faders to write with, and it's so much easier to find the right thing. It's just quicker, and quicker is almost always better.
In my Ballard studio, to see if the mix was done, I had one of two things. One was to burn a CD and play it on the small Sony boombox. The other was to get a headphone extension and bring my Sonys outside onto the porch, and I would listen to the mix completely outside the room, so my skin is feeling fresh air, and sometimes I'd smoke a cigarette, and it would tell me the mix was done or almost done. These days, I don't smoke cigarettes, and I do this hippie trick that I figured out for myself. If you go to YouTube and plug in train cam, train like locomotive, cam like camera, there's all these long videos that are all trains driving around Japan or Germany or whatever, and some of them are in the summer and some of them are in the winter. But I put that on the screen and I forget about Pro Tools. And my eyes are pulled into this image, which is kind of mesmerizing. It's everything going past you, right? And then my ears become like much more clever, much more perceptive, and I get all the intellectual imposter syndrome under control and can just focus on the music. And I do this for clients, for some of them, and they kind of get it, but it's a real live brain distraction. So anyway, that may not work for you, but that works for me.
But it opens up a whole new field of train cam remixing.
Exactly.
You could sell a compilation of the videos, like for.
Well, and Michel Gondry, this amazing director, did this video for the Chemical Brothers, that's just an EDM track, a kind of mid-tempo one, and it's a train cam just out the window, but somehow he's cut it into loops. So the steering wheel comes by, the telephone pole comes by, the dairy comes by, everything comes by in these loops over and over again, and then it flashes, and we're in some other part of the city, but it's all loops because that was kind of his thing, was making loops. Anyway, that got me looking for train cams. Was the Michel Gondry video. So that's a conversation killer. Sorry.
No, I love it. I had to look it up. I just posted one. It was like a Norwegian 9 hours. Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite music videos because the what you see outside the window of the train is synchronized with the music.
Yes, exactly. It loops on the beat. And that's Michel Gondry's done some amazing videos. He did the hardest button to button for the White Stripes and all kinds of weird high-tech videos. It's a real trip.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you for that tip.
Yeah, no. Here's another one. When you got the earworm and you're trying to go to sleep and that stupid thing you've been working on all day is stuck in your head, go to a classical music broadcast and put on some 19th century drivel. Some orchestral piece that builds a little bit and comes down and does a thing. I'm not talking about the Anvil chorus or the Hall of a Mountain King, no riff rock, just a real live orchestral exposition, right? And then turn it just a little down so you don't really hear the quiet part, just the loud parts. And for me, that eats up just enough of my brain that the part that would fall into the earworm never gets there because it's always being distracted by this somewhat complicated 19th century Western European orchestral composition that I would never listen to in the daytime. But at night, it can help me fall asleep. Tips for a living at the AES Zoom call. There we go. John, your mic is muted. That makes me nervous.
Sorry, my mic is muted.
I'm happy to stick around. I have to step away for half a second. I'll be right back.
I came back.
Yeah.
I came back in time to hear the tips for living. I had to go eat dinner.
And aren't you glad?
Yeah, listen, I actually was in Europe Skinyard was touring Europe in 1991, and I was in this hotel room in Germany. And at 2 a.m, these train videos would come on. Now, like here, you would have like the weird, the test pattern would come on when the programming ended, in the middle of the night. In Europe, they had these train videos that would just run all night long. I guess for people with insomnia, they would just turn these train videos on. And I thought, wow, that's a great thing at 3 a.m. when you can't sleep. So this was a real thing. Just funny hearing Steve talk about it.
Genius, yeah. How much more civilized can you get? It's great.
Yeah. Well, I got nothing else. I just
glad you got dinner in. Yeah,
had to do it.
Yep, it's important.
It's been great, everybody. I'm going to roll again.
Say hi to Mia for me.
Yeah,
I will.
likewise.
Absolutely. Yep. Signing off from Skamakaway, Washington. That's where I'm
Till
at now.
till next time. Thanks, Jack.
Yep.
See
Pleasure.
you, Jack.
See you later.
But I think I've got someone coming home as well, so I probably road Jack. But thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Yeah, our pleasure. Really glad you could make it happen tonight. Is really special.
Yeah, it's it's always fun to talk. All right. Have a great evening, everybody.
You
too. Till next time. Good night.
Good night.
See ya.
I've got to run too, so
All right.
good
It's going to
chatting
be
with everybody.
that time. Yeah, you
Yeah.
too. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for the history, Tom. That was great to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thanks for all the great information. These stories are what makes this industry so interesting. All the history. See
I
you at
got
the
a
next
roll
one.
too.
All right.
Nice meeting new faces, and thanks everyone.
Yep.
You too. Have a lovely evening.
Glad you guys can
Thanks.
make it. See you next time.
Definitely.
I suppose we shouldn't all leave before Steve comes. Oh, Steve's
Oh,
back.
Steve's back. Yep.
Oh, good.
Welcome back.
I'm back to close things down.
Comes back to an empty room.
Oh no.
I
Wouldn't
was
let
gonna
that
say,
happen.
Steve, I remember carrying your ARP 2600 up the stairs to a venue that I ran for like 12 months. And I don't know if Skerrick was there the same night, but you performed in a space that my friends and I ran. I guess
At
between
Olympia or Seattle?
Seattle, Capitol Hill.
Oh shit! Yeah, that was fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
was it that art gallery?
It was above the art gallery. We just called it the clubhouse, but it was on the second story. Yeah, it was actually above Vermilion. We got in trouble for having people dance and dust would come off the ceiling downstairs.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Unanticipated consequences.
Yeah, I was running the system in quad. I don't know if you actually put out 4 channels, especially since the 2600's mono, but I know Skerrick did a quad set there. I just mentioned, hey, we have 4 speakers. And he's like, oh, I can actually send you 4 channels. So I had fun. I had a Metric Halo Labs audio interface, and I could, and a 16 channel stage box, so I could mess around and send different things to different speakers. And
Yeah, quad still rocks. I still do things in quad every once in a while, especially in the theater. It's really fun.
yeah, a long time ago, I still have it. I licensed the DTS encoder for my Mac, and I could burn a DTS music disc. So I did some for fun quad and 5.1 mixes of bands that I recorded live multi-track in various venues. And then I would burn, like I couldn't listen to it in surround unless I actually burned a disc and threw it into
the player. Yeah.
Yeah. But that DTS encoder I really liked. I didn't want to, for some reason I was uppity and didn't want to use Dolby Digital. So I believe that I upgraded to DTS. And
Never a bad reason to be uppity, you know.
But for a while, people like the Police and Santana were remixing in surround and releasing CDs that you could plop into your movie player.
Well, that was another one of the great things that was going to save the music industry, was that they were burning, DVDs that had audio on them, and so you could have a 92 res version of the Neil Young record, and then some immersive experience where you got to watch him listen to his new record, played on a PA system next to his barn or something like that. But I heard some surround mixes by I forget the guy's name, does all the shit for the Flaming Lips, really amazing engineer. And he'd done these just mandala kind of like revolving surround mixes that just were amazing. And I heard a surround mix of Hotel California that wasn't bad. You know, things that said, all right, this sound, I thought 5.1 was the shit, and I was very excited about it. And of course, it didn't happen.
Weren't the
That's
Flaming
why,
Lips the ones that did the thing where they released like 4 CDs and you
yeah,
put them into the players and set them all on at once?
yeah, that was the same guys. Yeah, they're from Oklahoma. Quite an interesting crew. Did all kinds of John Cage stuff in the 90s. You know, so quite a trip. There's a documentary about them. Talks all about stuff. I forget what it's called. But if I didn't like quad, I wouldn't be playing with that immersion thing that, you know, Jim invited me into and all of that. So for some reason, that's always been an interest of mine. So,
any new multi-channel releases that you've heard and might recommend?
no, but I don't end up in that kind of world very often. I heard a lot of great stuff out in Redmond that was not for commercial release. There were things that they'd done just to show off their program. But the new Peter Gabriel record, if it isn't out yet, that's supposed to be a very big Atmos record where they re-recorded everything so they could have things spread out and do handoffs and all of that. So Peter Gabriel went out of his way to make a record that didn't necessarily resemble the stereo version. He wanted to make a version that would work in the three-dimensional space. So how it sounds is always up in the air. The thing we didn't talk about and the difference between Atmos and immersion is Atmos, you just set the speakers in the room. And it doesn't matter if the room's treated or anything. Immersion, the only place it existed was some room where they'd spend $1 million tuning it. And then there's time delays on all the speakers to aim to the sweet spot and all of that. So that's the idea, is that immersion isn't supposed to be something that you go by speakers and set it up in your garage. It was this real life thing where, and this is something that nobody's talking about in the Atmos world, is the acoustic space totally affects the sound and it doesn't travel. So you need a completely neutral environment to do a 711, you know, a 7.11 or 7.4 or whatever you're doing, you know, and if you don't have that, then you're just entertaining yourself, you know. And I feel sorry for the people who all spent $50,000 on a 711 because they thought Atmos is going to make them some money or something like that.
Yeah, I guess you can't unhear the room that you're actually in, no matter how much the other room is in the recording.
Right, exactly. No, it changes everything. It changes how you, I mean, that's what I fight in here, this dumb little bedroom, you know.
Yeah.
It's kick and the snare does something here, does something here, it does something else back here. And so you have to, learn how to do that. And you listen to headphones on we got 2 pairs of monitors, old-fashioned NS10Ms, and these Atom what are they, SA2As, modern, whatever. But it's fine. It all works. I'm used to traveling and getting used to weird speakers. So as weird as my own speakers are, I'm used to them. So I know how to mix on them.
The AES held a meeting here in Los Angeles at the Hitchcock's Theater where they record their new Atmos mixes for new movie releases. And being mischievous, I asked the guys about the objects that Atmos has. And the engineers that were there basically said, we just use the bed channels. We usually mix for 9.1. We don't have any objects, because if you actually listen to an object moving around in this 62 channel theater, it sounds really odd. But if you mix it in the 9.1 bed channels and then let that get decoded or whatever to the 62 speakers, then it's not focused on any one particular speaker and the sound ends up integrating better. So I thought that was interesting that it's mostly the producers saying, we want an Atmos mix. So the engineers say, okay, we'll just do a 9.1 mix or a 7.1 mix, and we'll bounce it in Atmos format and call it good.
That was one of the selling points of immersion, it was one of the only things that Atmos allowed you. Is one of the other companies outside of Atmos that said, okay, things from immersion can be posted on the Atmos site, can officially be called Atmos mixes, because in immersion, you could export it as stereo, you could export it as an immersion file, or you could export it as an Atmos file. So there's actually some things on Spotify and Apple Music that were done with immersion, and Rondinelli could tell you more about that than I could. And now we got a dog, and that's really
Yes.
nice.
She really needs to go out, you guys.
Oh,
So
what a cutie.
yeah.
Let's let the dog have a break. It's been great talking to everybody here. It's always great to see Rick. You know, I know we bump heads every 11, 15 years or whatever, but totally great stories. Always love hearing them. And Janie, for God's sake, and yeah.
Yeah, it's been dog years, Steve. Talking about the dog.
Oh no, I was at a memorial for an Olympia kid younger than me, but it was just like, wow, there's 350 people here, and I recognize almost all of them.
Wow.
and it had been 10, 15 years, 20 years, so yeah.
Wow.
If we haven't met what's going to kill us yet, we can all be assured it's coming.
Now we're all due, right?
Yeah, no one gets out of here alive. Didn't somebody say that?
Yep.
Anyway, I have to go take care of some business here. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a blast.
Oh, thanks for coming, Steve. This is really a treat, and just glad you could be here and make it happen. Please come back anytime.
Yeah.
Movies every
Oh,
month.
that's really cool.
Mhm.
Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks. Feel like I'm back in Seattle.
It's great
I'm
to
in
see
Tacoma,
you too, Brian.
Well, we'll leave the light on for you.
That's close enough.
Very good.